The smoke over the square had not yet fully cleared. Crackstone's spirit had been devoured by the nightmare, and the scorched wreck of Dr. 77 still emitted faint wisps of smoke. The remaining 7 Vicks and the 7ths, all but Venom, flickered like poor holograms a few times, then silently dissolved into the air. The drug's effect had been even more transient than anyone expected. That's it? So, his last move was just to split us up? Vic scratched his head, bewildered at the wreckage, as if the final boss's ultimate attack felt oddly anticlimactic. Vic! Enid was the first to rush over, wrapped in an oversized coat she must have grabbed somewhere. Her face glowed with the sort of grin that comes after surviving disaster. "We won!" she cried, throwing herself into Vic's arms. He froze for a second, eyes widening. "Enid, under you," he started. "Shut up!" Enid's cheeks flamed. She buried her face against his chest and mumbled, barely audible, "I was 5 meters tall just now. My clothes got completely shredded." Vic gave an awkward laugh as he understood. His eyes moved to where Wednesday stood, reserved as ever, but with a flicker of something softer in her deep, dark eyes. A small, mischievous grin tugged at the corner of Vic's mouth. Without a word, he pulled Wednesday into the hug with his other arm. She stiffened for a moment, then offered only a token struggle before letting him hold her, a faint blush staining her pale cheeks. Nearby, Gomez and Morticia Addams watched from the crowd. Gomez clapped vigorously, pride written all over his face. "Bravo! Well done, kid." Morticia watched her daughter, the expression on her face complicated, then softened into a knowing smile. "Now I finally understand why this girl would rather share than be apart from this young man. He is an unusual child." On the other side, Enid's parents, Miss Cheong and Mr. Fai, Ely looked on at their daughter tangled with her arms dealer boyfriend and his other girlfriend. They exchanged helpless glances. "What can you do? Our daughter loves him," Miss Cheong sighed, rubbing her temples. Mr. Ely had already started calculating whether to add a special social expenses allowance to her pocket money. The warm moment broke when Venom writhed anxiously at Vic's feet. It tried to climb onto him and merge as usual, but an invisible barrier repelled it. It scrambled up to Vic's shoulder and thumped its massive white eyes against his ear with frantic urgency. "Vic, run! Get out of this area now!" "What's wrong, buddy?" Vic asked, puzzled. "We won. What's there to run from?" "Win my ass," Venom practically roared, voice raw with panic. "I can't merge with you anymore. That bastard self-destructed and left an anti-intrusion field over this area. It blocks 7 fusion. Listen, Vic, the piece of shit fake heart they put in you won't hold out much longer." The words hit Vic like a bucket of cold water. His smile froze. He released Enid and Wednesday, and voice tight with resolve, said, "I'll be right back." Before anyone could stop him, he shot off like an arrow, sprinting toward the academy boundary. "What happened?" people called. Enid and Wednesday answered at the same time, then exchanged a look and took off after him. Mavis, Johnny, the Addamses, and the Sinclair couples, sensing something was wrong, followed. Vic ran as if his life depended on it, shouting a rapid briefing to the crowd behind him. The fragments reached them on the breeze. "When I was a kid, escaping the lab, a plague doctor, Euro-62, ambushed me, shot through my heart. Venom cobbled a fake heart out of lab parts. It only keeps beating if we power it intermittently. Venom can speed my healing, but it can't make a heart out of nothing." "Stop talking. Save your breath. Full speed," Venom barked. "Less than 2 minutes left. That damn heart is almost out." A race against 2 minutes. Panic replaced the triumph. Everyone's footsteps and ragged breaths blurred into a single chase toward an impossible hope. Vic felt like his lungs were on fire. The cold air scraped at his throat. The contraption in his chest, made from lab scraps and 7 tissue, grated and clicked with each weakening beat. Dark spots spread at the edges of his vision like ink dropped into water. Exhaustion and chill seeped into his bones as if his blood were freezing. "Faster! Almost there!" Venom writhed on his shoulder, eyes fixed on the faint, shimmering wave that marked Nevermore Academy's boundary. Its voice was thin with terror. 30 seconds! No, 25! 25 seconds. The distance between death and life compressed into heartbeats. Enid's tears, Wednesday's urgent footsteps, and the chaotic noise of pursuit were all around him, but Vic could barely hear them. Everything focused on the line ahead. 20 seconds. His legs started to fail. He pitched forward. "No, Vic, Get up! Run! Venom screamed. 15 seconds. Vic bit the tip of his tongue until sharp pain and the metallic taste of blood cleared his mind for one more push. He scrambled forward on all fours like a ragged thing. 10 seconds. His fingertips brushed a cool, wavering barrier, the academy boundary. 5 seconds. Get through it! Venom roared. Vic pressed his forehead to the invisible field. His legs felt like lead. His heart barely fluttered. 3 seconds. Darkness swallowed his vision. The world dropped away. No! Venom's final frantic wail cut off as Vic's consciousness slipped. His body went limp and collapsed, one faltering step inside the boundary, so close to freedom and life. Vic! Vic! Enid and Wednesday practically threw themselves onto him at once. They hauled him up, Mavis shoved from behind, and together they forced him across the line. Move! Everyone! Get back! As soon as Vic crossed the boundary and left the anti-intrusion field, Venom writhed in frantic relief and dove to merge with him again. 82. When end is no longer the end. Venom's pitch-black symbiote coiled around the crude, jury-rigged heart in Victor's chest like the most meticulous of surgeons. It funneled energy into the dead machine, desperately trying to coax a spark back to life. Once, twice, 10 times. Nothing. The rough, makeshift heart that had kept Victor alive for over a decade sat utterly silent, like an old clockwork that had run out of wind. Move! Damn it! Move! Venom howled from the depths of Victor's consciousness. Not a sound in the room, but a roar of fear and helplessness. When Dr. 062 had pierced Victor's heart more than 10 years ago, Venom had stitched this thing together on instinct and a sliver of luck. It never expected it to hold. That it had lasted at all was a stolen miracle, and now that miracle was slipping away. Outside, Victor's body sagged into Enid's and Wednesday's arms. Victor! Enid's cry tore the air. Her golden hair was wild, tears falling like a string of shattered pearls onto Victor's cooling face. She shook him as if motion alone could bring him back. Wednesday pressed her lips together until they were a thin line. Her eyes, normally still as a black pond, rhymed red and trembled. She gripped Victor's cold hand so hard her nails bit into her palm, and she felt nothing. A new icy fear named loss crawled down her spine. Mavis stood a little apart. Non-human senses made her perception of life sharper. She could hear the life force within Victor ebbing, and a great sorrow washed over her. She shut her eyes and whispered hoarsely, "Venom." Venom extended a small, dejected black head from Victor's chest. Its great white eyes had lost their usual shine. In a raw, rasping voice, it announced the unavoidable verdict. Say your final goodbyes to him. What did you say? Enid snapped, fury and disbelief tearing through her. What final goodbye? Didn't he cross that boundary? It's not enough. I can drag him farther away. I can't restart that broken heart, Venom replied, exhausted and furious. When I built this thing over a decade ago, it was desperation. I never expected it to work. That it lasted this long is stolen time. Victor's eyelids fluttered. A sliver of light returned to his pupils, thin and colorless. His voice was a fragile thread that might snap. Sorry, everyone. This time, maybe. It's really time to say goodbye. He turned his head with agonizing slowness, drinking in every sorrowful face. It's okay to die like this, surrounded by family. For me, maybe this is the best ending. The words trailed away. His eyes closed. His chest no longer rose. The salvaged heart that had bought him over a decade more time had finished its final duty. No, Victor, please, please wake up. Enid threw herself over him, her wails breaking into desperate sobs. Wednesday shut her eyes. 2 clear tears finally escaped and slid silently down her cheeks. She tilted her head back, jaw clenched as if to keep from falling apart. Mavis gathered sobbing Wednesday and Dennis into an embrace, her own face streaked with salt. Johnny pounded his fist against the ground. Principal Larissa and the Addams and Sinclair couples bowed their heads. Heavy grief pressed down on everyone. Wednesday typed the final letter on the last line of the manuscript with an expressionless face. She hit the carriage return. The click cracked through the dorm room silence. Slurp, slurp. An ill-timed sound sliced that silence. Victor sipped from a huge cup of thick chocolate milkshake, slurping loudly, and protested in a petulant, muffled way. What, so I'm already written off? I'm the male lead? Don't I get more screen time? And I die? This ending is ridiculous. Venom poked its head out from Victor's shoulder, white eyes narrowed in customary mockery. Perhaps the author thinks you're an embarrassing lead, it said. Better to die early and be reborn. Wednesday tied the manuscript with a black ribbon and slid it into the drawer with calm detachment. For a work that explores the emptiness of life and the futility of love, a flawed ending, even one of destruction, makes for a perfect conclusion, she said, matter of fact. She looked to Enid, who was still clinging to Victor like a koala. Let go of him. He's revived. I won't, Enid's arms tightened. She pressed her cheek to Victor's neck. If I let go, he'll disappear again. When his heart stopped, I wanted to go with him. Victor's face melted at the confession. He stroked Enid's hair and laughed, a little dazed. Honestly, I thought it was over. If I had to put it, yeah, that was a miracle. His mind slipped back 5 hours to the academy boundary, the place of despair and hope both. Rewind to 5 hours ago. In that deathly quiet, Enid's werewolf-enhanced hearing caught an almost imperceptible new sound. Thump, thump, a slow, heavy heartbeat, weak but undeniably real. Venom, Victor's heart, Enid cried, tears still streaking her face, but her eyes flaring with fierce light. Venom reacted like lightning. The black symbiote flowed back into Victor, sinking into him and locking onto the heart that should have been useless. It wrapped around the newly beating organ, reinforcing it, pumping life into the frail rhythm. Ha! Venom exploded into triumphant laughter in Victor's head, babbling with excitement. Brother, I knew you weren't meant to die. You're a troublemaker to the end. The wicked live 1,000 years. Victor's lashes fluttered. He felt a real pulse, and for a stunned moment couldn't place it. Then joy washed over him. I'm not dead? All that doom-saying was nonsense, he blurted, sitting up straighter as if the world had been handed back to him. What kind of tragic best ending is that? I haven't lived enough. I want to marry Enid and Wednesday, and have a bunch of little maniacs, and have Mavis help with the kids. Venom, good brother, hold steady. Please, God, if you're listening, let me live. I'll try to be less terrible, maybe. His words tumbled out in an ecstatic, rambling rush. Venom's white eyes curved into delighted slits. Success, heartbeat stabilized. Welcome back, brother. Victor pumped a fist and shouted toward the sky. Exhilaration and defiance mixed together. Fuck you, God. Today's not the day. I'm not dying yet. Around him, shock flipped instantly to wild, relieved joy. Enid, who had barely held herself together, launched into his arms like a cannonball and kissed him, fervent, messy, full of tears and fear and a possessive joy. Victor tasted salt and sweetness and thought he might faint. Then Wednesday stepped forward. She didn't throw herself at him. She grabbed his shirt collar with that precise, imperious manner she always had, pulled him down, and sealed his mouth with a deliberate, lingering kiss. It was colder than Enid's, more controlled, but no less intimate, an icy pact. I have you, and you are mine. Victor stood stunned, eyes wide and utterly delighted. From the side, little Dennis made a drawn-out, astonished sound, while young Wednesday watched unblinking. Mavis, relieved and amused, covered the children's eyes with one hand. Not for children yet, she said lightly. Beneath the sunlight, Victor, who had come back from the brink, found himself sandwiched between the two girls and circled by friends and family. A mad, uncertain future still waited, but in that moment his heart beat true and the embraces were as warm as they felt. A crow perched on a branch nearby, watching quietly. Light flickered in its eyes like data streams, recording the scene. 83. Hidden Memories. The room was dim, bathed in the cold blue glow of low-temperature life support pods. The air itself seemed frozen. With a soft hiss, Dr. 77 pushed open the pod door and stepped out, movements slow and stiff with exhaustion. The chill of the metal floor seeped through his thin protective suit. His eyes swept across 52 pods in neat rows. The red indicator lights atop each one screamed the same verdict. Vital signs terminated. Excessive, Dr. 77 muttered, rubbing his temples, which still felt bruised. A single suggestion at the consciousness level could warp my thinking this badly. It took 52 consecutive self-terminations just to barely negate that coercion. He shook his head, trying to rid himself of the residual shock. The procedural pain didn't matter now. What mattered was the last image the mechanical crow had sent him before his most recent death. He traced a line through the air. A soft light screen unfolded, replaying the shocking scene at the edge of Nevermore Academy. Victor Black's body, already declared dead, was surrounded by despairing figures. Then, impossibly, his chest began to rise and fall again. The heart that had been cobbled from scrap and should have been useless was beating, driven by an invisible hand. "Science doesn't permit this," Dr. 77 whispered, eyes sharp. The crow's scans let him see details no one on site could. There were no power surges, no external interference, nothing that fit known physics or any occult explanation. The scene was as nonsensical as a car with its engine removed, accelerating down a highway. The logical mansion he'd built on data and proof was cracking. Wrong. It's all wrong. His gaze turned cold as quenched iron. Whether it's C-136 Vic or C-137 Venom, their behavior contradicts Dr. 62's records. That old man was hiding something crucial. Dr. 077 was sure of it. "Number 32. The call echoed in the empty life support chamber. The door slid open, and a young man in standard uniform hurried in. Number 32. His eyes flicked over the rows of red lights. His pupils tightened. Fear crossed his face, quickly smoothed into composure. "Doctor," he said respectfully, "I'll sterilize these pods and start the cloning sequence." "Not necessary. Dr. Gray." 077 waved him off, voice carrying absolute authority. "Hold that. Help me visit an old friend." Number 32 stepped forward, supporting Dr. 77, who still moved with a faint stiffness from the pod. They walked several silent corridors to a secluded room. It was bare except for a single white platform at its center, on which sat a transparent nutrient tank. Inside, a faintly pulsing brain floated, tethered by countless delicate wires and tubes. "Dr. Tay." 077 entered commands at the console. A holographic projection of a frail old man shimmered into being above the tank. At the sight of Dr. 77, the projection convulsed, lunged forward in rage, and futilely tried to pass through him, emitting a wordless, distorted roar. "077, you bastard thief! How dare you lock me in this cold cyber cage?" The projection of Dr. 62 raged, his voice warped by synthesis. "Calm down, Dr. 062. Dr. Day," 077 said, cold and concise. "I have seen C-136 and C-137. Dr. 62's fury stilled. For a beat, the projection froze, then adopted a dismissive air, as if remembering something trivial. "Oh, those two failures? Tsk. They're stubborn. Who would have thought they haven't self-destructed after all these years?" "Not only are they alive," Dr. 77 said, eyes locked on the projection, "they've escaped my pursuit twice and cost me many mechanical units." "Ha! Then you truly are useless." Dr. 62's laugh was sharp and mocking. Number 32 bristled, stepping forward in anger, but Dr. 077 raised a hand to halt him. "Dr. 62, you're hiding something." Dr. 077's voice was steady. "Put aside C-137's symbiotic biology for now. It's far beyond your records. Focus on C-136, that scientifically inexplicable event, the spontaneous revival of a heart. What power caused that?" "I don't know what nonsense you're spouting." 062's projection snapped, but the voice wavered. Under the surface, unease had crept in. Dr. 077's respect for his predecessor's work softened into something colder. "You were one of the top researchers in flesh evolution and gene chimerism. Even reduced to a brain, you managed to evade my previous deep memory scans. This time, you won't hide it." He nodded to number 32. The younger man, unable to hold back any longer, produced a peculiar precision instrument that pulsed with a dangerous red light. With a force that felt like a release of contained anger, he slotted it into the core interface linking the nutrient tank to the brain. "What are you doing?" "Neo 77, my serial predates yours. This is overstepping. Betrayal." Dr. 062's projection trembled, panic breaking through. "Stop. You don't understand what you're trying to pry into," the projection cried. "It will bring destruction." "It will if you keep hiding it," Dr. 077 replied, icy and absolute. "Serial numbers don't matter when results do. Number 32, proceed." "Yes, doctor." Number 32 slammed the activation button. Blinding light poured into the tank. Dr. 062's projection let out a fearful, tortured scream as it distorted and disintegrated. The instrument's cold hum tapered off. On the light screen, fragments of memory, Dr. 062's most guarded secrets, were forcibly extracted, parsed, and replayed. The broken images unfolded like a damaged film reel. Static, cracks, the skewed viewpoint of Dr. 062 himself. Under a shadowless lamp, on a cold metal dissection table, lay the young Victor Black, test subject C-136. His body was a map of horrific wounds. The monitor showed a flat line. Alarms had been wailing. A recorded log scrolled across the feed. Log, C-136, 37th extreme tolerance test failed. Vital signs absent for over 180 seconds. Death confirmed. Dr. 062's clinical voice narrated the event with a hint of regret, perhaps impatience at the loss of experimental material. He turned to signal an assistant to dispose of the waste, and in those seconds the death line on the monitor jumped, then jumped again, then a third time. The reanimations were weak, but stubbornly persistent. The viewpoint tightened on Victor's pale face. Eyes that should have been lifeless fluttered. Lashes trembled. A slit opened. Within the pupils was a blankness, and something else, an incomprehensible spark of life. 84. Named a miracle scenes flashed by in a brutal montage. Repeated death scenarios, lethal injection, organ removal, exposure to extreme environments, induced genetic collapse. Each time, Dr. 062 and his team, working from rigorous datasets and physiological indicators, concluded C-136 had no chance of survival. And each time, just as they were about to mark termination in the record, C-136 inexplicably recovered. Sometimes a stopped heart restarted, sometimes failing organs regained function, sometimes consciousness reformed after what looked like irreversible brain death. There was no pattern, no warning, and nothing in biology, medicine, or even fringe theory could explain it. It was as if an unruly, irrational error forcefully corrected the inevitable outcome, death. In the lab log, every death entry for C-136 was followed by a huge question mark and the single word, survived. This accident, repeated hundreds of times, the team moved from initial shock to numbness. Then came the 176th test. They cycled C-136 between absolute zero and extreme heat 10 times, and the recorder showed his atomic structure had completely disintegrated. 3 hours later, he smiled up at them from the nutrient tank. Numbness curdled into a deep, unnameable fear. What they faced was not life, it was an error. The scene shifted to the night C-136 escaped. In Dr. 062's memory, everything that day had been normal until, at one instant, every surveillance feed covering C-136, Vic's cell, and C-137, its container, went static. The system log registered an unknown instantaneous fault, lasting exactly 1 minute. In that minute, a chain of coincidences happened. The alloy cell door, that required a triple dynamic password and a physical key, failed from supposed metal fatigue and was opened by C-136's clumsy method. The reinforced glass enclosure holding C-137, rated to withstand heavy weaponry, developed stress cracks invisible to the naked eye and was easily smashed by C-136. The guard squad, which should have made rounds every 5 minutes, just happened to be absent because of an impromptu briefing. When the feeds returned a minute later, C-136 and C-137 had merged and begun their carnage. Previous compatibility tests had shown zero compatibility between them. Fusion should have been impossible, yet they had succeeded. It was as if an invisible hand had paved the way for them during that 1-minute blind spot. The final fragment showed Dr. 062 himself piercing Victor Black's heart with an energy weapon. As the young man fell and his life force drained, Dr. 062 felt a complicated relief. Finally, he thought, ending this error. But his certainty collapsed later when he found Victor alive. The crude heart Carnage had cobbled together from industrial scrap and symbiote tissue, beating awkwardly but continuously in Victor's chest. Dr. 062's conviction dissolved into horror tinged with enlightenment. On the light screen, his holographic projection's face contorted, not with anger, but with the stunned clarity of someone who had seen something that didn't fit any framework. His inner voice played on as a narration, hollow after shock. I understand. I finally understand. This isn't a superpower, not a mutation, not any form of ability we know. If I have to name it, I'm afraid the only name that fits is miracle, a force that brutally, illogically turns the impossible into the possible. My first reaction was ecstasy. This power is everything my path to evolution needs. To force the impossible into possible, this is the ultimate key. But I quickly overturned that damned idea. No, that's wrong. Can something achieved by a miracle still be called evolution? Evolution is rigorous, reproducible, built on rules and accumulation. What is miracle? God's mercy? Fate's charity? It's cheating without reason. It negates effort, negates law, negates everything we strive for. Dr. 662's face showed extreme revulsion and resistance. I must conceal it. Evolution should be a hard climb, an epic of survival of the fittest, not this cheap, heaven-sent divine grace. If 17 found out, they'd pounce on this power like dogs on a bone, and our lifetime of work, our bloody, fiery pursuit of evolution, would become a joke waiting for God to throw the dice. The organization's ideals would shatter. Our scientific path would become a ridiculous farce chasing miracles. The whole institution would fall apart because of it. The memory cut off abruptly. The lab was silent. Dr. 77 closed his eyes, breathed slowly, and when he opened them again, his gaze was unnervingly clear and fed by something deeper than resolve, hungry anticipation. So that's it, miracle. He spoke the words softly, a slight curve at the corner of his mouth that was neither joy nor anger, but the thrill of having found the ultimate prey. Dr. 62 was right. Evolution doesn't need God's mercy. But he was also wrong in one thing. We must understand and use this power. If miracle truly exists, making it serve evolution would be its most extreme application. He turned to 32, his voice returning to its usual calm authority. Clean this up. Dr. 062 was right about one thing. This cannot be known by anyone else in the organization, especially those old men at 17. 32 nodded, eyes shining with a fanaticism that looked almost martyr-like. As you command, Dr. 77. His finger pressed the final button on the instrument, which glowed an ominous red. The machine hummed, then a bright white light and a high-frequency energy pulse engulfed Dr. 062's last remaining brain in the nutrient tank. Pipes and circuits sparked. The pale yellow nutrient solution clouded and burned. The brain tissue that had pulsed for so many years atrophied and charred until only a small, meaningless mass hung suspended in the tank. Dr. 062's consciousness, fearful, angry, unwilling, and full of buried secrets, was erased from the world. No last words, no struggle, like a corrupt segment of code deleted. Mission accomplished. 32 withdrew his hands slowly, expression blank after completing the bloody task, only the solemnity of one who has fulfilled orders. He watched Dr. 077 walking toward the door, then performed his final obedience. He pulled his service pistol with no hesitation and placed the cool metal against his right temple. His movements were smooth, without tremor, as if this were not suicide, but the last step in a sacred ritual. For the evolution of all humanity, he murmured, the words quiet but utterly resolved. Dr. 077 did not stop or look back. He answered in the same flat tone one might use to confirm a mundane fact. Indeed, for the evolution of all humanity. A suppressed shot. 32's body swayed and then slumped. A small, charred wound marked his temple and blood oozed slowly, but his face was frozen in a strange calm, a mixture of fanaticism and serenity, as if he had glimpsed the path of evolution unfolding ahead. Dr. 77 pulled open the heavy isolation door without expression. In the corridor, a young uniformed man happened to pass by. His code blurred, maybe 73, maybe 105. It didn't matter to Dr. 77. He stopped the youth casually, as if asking a favor. You go clean up the trash inside. The young man hesitated, glanced in, saw 32 on the floor and the smoking nutrient tank, and did not look afraid. Instead, he mirrored the same fanaticism that had led 32 to his end. Yes, Dr. 77, executing immediately. Dr. 77 walked away, leaving death and cleanup behind him. Sacrifice was necessary. Whether it was Dr. 62's brain or 32's loyalty, they were just stepping stones on the way to ultimate evolution. Victor Black, the living miracle, was the key he needed to truly study and utilize. Cleaning up the evidence kept the path clean. His journey was out among the stars, the other shore of evolution, the divine realm, where miracles would be in his grasp. The last day at Nefermore Academy arrived. Summer sunlight poured through stained glass windows, painting dappled patterns across ancient corridors. The air buzzed with farewells and holiday anticipation. Vic, you absolutely have to come to my house for summer vacation. My mom said she's stocked a whole cupboard of chocolates for you. And we can go camping in the forest. I know a spot where you can see swarms of fireflies at night. Enid chittered like a happy bird, bouncing around Vic, sapphire eyes bright as she shoved neatly folded clothes into her slightly messy suitcase. Vic answered with distracted, uh-huhs, wearing his goofy half-smile, but his gaze stayed fixed on the laptop screen in front of him. Wednesday Addams packed in silence beside them. Every black garment was folded with surgical precision and laid into her antique suitcase, like a specimen awaiting burial. Her movements were efficient. The only sound was the crisp click of the suitcase clasp. When she finished, she still held one small item. Note 9. She lifted her dark, limpid eyes to Vic and asked in her usual even tone, "What are you looking at?" On the screen, a surveillance interface flashed, evidence of an illicit intrusion. "Oh, this," Vic said without looking up, fingers flying across the keyboard. "I was just looking for something fun, trying to hack the new U.S. military base nearby to see if they'd gotten any new toys. But it turns out..." He hit enter and the screen froze on an image of an especially heavily guarded, distinct facility. The interface blinked. Section 13, top clearance. "Who knew?" Vic grinned, that signature mix of mischief and excitement. "I just happened to find something more interesting. Have you heard of Section 13 or 18? Wednesday and Enid exchanged baffled looks. Enid tilted her head. Wednesday barely raised an eyebrow. Vic's grin widened until it was nearly blinding. He snapped the laptop shut with a sharp sound, stretched until his joints popped, and declared, eyes gleaming, "Looks like this summer won't be boring. Fun just delivered itself to our doorstep. Volume 1 ends. Volume 2 begins with Hotel Transylvania 3-style hijinks, a crazy vacation, an Atlantis trip, and taking 2 girlfriends on a luxury cruise." 85 side story, the beginning of the story. It was deep midnight in the dormitory. Candlelight flickered across Wednesday's pale, intent face. Open before her lay the book that held endless mystery and danger, the Dark Codex. Enid nervously clutched the hem of her skirt, her blue eyes fixed on the eerie runes that crawled across the page. "Are you sure this spell is safe, Wednesday?" Enid's voice trembled just a little. Wednesday didn't look up. Her slender fingers traced a particularly complex incantation, and her voice was as cool as ever. "There is no word for safe in the Dark Codex, only cost and result. According to this entry, we can project our consciousness to a specific temporal anchor point. The duration depends on our mental strength. Theoretically, it won't alter the real timeline. We are merely observers, temporary ghost-like assistants. I just want to see what Vic was like as a child." Enid's cheeks flushed. Wednesday's lips twitched into the faintest of smiles. "Agreed. I am very interested in his early survival training. Ready?" Enid nodded, inhaled, and placed her hand over Wednesday's cold one. The incantation was murmured. The candle flame flared and then abruptly went out. Their minds were tugged by an invisible force and hurled down a strange, fantastical tunnel of time. 10 years earlier, in an abandoned lumberyard in Transylvania. A bitter wind drove snow through every crack of a dilapidated wooden shack. Young Victor Black, hunched by a dying fire, wrapped in an obviously oversized, filthy adult coat, his teeth chattering. His face was smudged with dirt, but his eyes shone fiercely in the dark, bright and wild, like a little wolf. So hungry," he muttered, clutching his rumbling stomach. On his shoulder, a mass of black, viscous substance moved with a life of its own, emitting a hoarse, low voice. "Wait, kid, I'll get you some protein." Before the words were done, the black mass shot from the cabin like an arrow, melting into the night. Soon there was a flutter and a dull thud outside. Venom's tendril retracted, coiling around a shabby dead bird. "Here, high in protein, lots of trace elements," Venom said, a hint of pride in his tone as he used a tentacle to start another fire and propped the bird over it to roast, feathers and all. Victor wrinkled his nose at the smell of charred feathers and something revolting. "Venom, are you sure this is edible? It smells like burnt rubber mixed with bird poop." "Picky brat, this is a delicacy," Venom retorted indignantly but carefully controlled the heat. When Victor ripped off a piece and stuffed it into his mouth, his face twisted. He spat it out violently. "Blah! Tough and fishy. Disgusting! Venom, your cooking is the worst in the universe." "Brat, be grateful for food. Don't waste it." Venom scolded, waving a few tentacles threateningly, then took a huge bite himself. 2 seconds later, he spat it out. "The creatures on this planet are truly unpalatable." "No, I don't think it's the species' fault," said a deadpan voice. 2 hazy, translucent figures had materialized in the shadows of the cabin, like ripples in water. Wednesday Addams and Enid Black had projected their consciousnesses back in time using the Dark Codex. They could not interfere with reality. Like ghosts, they could only watch. "It seems we arrived at the right time," Wednesday observed, arms crossed. Her dark eyes swept over the charred carcass. "This cooking method is a double murder of the ingredients and the digestive system." Enid's gaze fell on the small, shivering boy who postured fiercely at the fire despite his trembling. Her heart ached. She wanted to step forward and hug him, but could do nothing but pass through his cold body. "He's so small, alone. He must be terrified," she whispered, voice catching. Wednesday looked at Victor's large green eyes, made prominent by malnutrition. After a beat, she said, "Fear won't kill him. Venom's protein might." Over the following days, the two projections silently accompanied the boy and his symbiote. They were observers, but their presence changed things in subtle ways. When Venom enthusiastically went after another unfortunate bird with plans to toss it straight onto the flames, a sudden, cool idea brushed Victor's mind, an inspiration he couldn't explain. He snatched the bird, and remembering a shape of emotion as if whispered into him, clumsily but effectively processed it. A neck strike, skinning, cleaning with snow water, slow roasting over pine branches instead of direct flame. The meat that time was still rough, but at least it was edible. Venom circled it in surprise. "Hey, kid, when did you learn that trick?" Victor, a little bewildered, snapped back. "None of your business. Still better than your poisonous cuisine." Nights were the worst. Victor woke from nightmares, thin clothes soaked with cold sweat. Memories of the lab, of escape, and of parental abandonment haunted him. When he curled up and trembled, Enid would kneel beside him. She could not touch him, but she would hum an old lullaby from her werewolf clan and sing quietly, eyes full of tenderness. "It's all right, Vic. You're safe. You're brave," she would whisper until his breath evened. Miraculously, the nightmares lessened. In the freezing dark, his frown would smooth, his breathing steady. In waking hours, he was all sharp edges and sarcasm, cursing at the cold and the white coats with a voice too rough for a child. "This damn weather's trying to make me an icicle," he'd mutter. "Those bastards in white coats, don't make me see them again." Wednesday, ever impassive, would say, "Cursing is inefficient. Surviving and growing stronger is the best revenge." Enid would offer a softer line. "You will grow up, Vic. You'll meet friends. You won't be alone forever." When Victor fell from a tree trying to steal eggs and opened a deep gash on his knee, he didn't cry. Pain was a familiar thing. He glared at the wound. "What are you looking at? Keep staring and I'll dig you out," he threatened the cut. "Venom, help stop the bleeding." Wednesday raised an eyebrow. Threatening one's own tissue is an early symptom of schizophrenia. Enid couldn't help laughing, then quickly said, pitying, "Blow on it, Vic, blow on it, and it won't hurt." For reasons he couldn't explain, he did, puffing a few breathless puffs against the skin, then turning his face away, as if embarrassed. Under the silent companionship and the subtle guidance of the two future ghosts, Victor and Venom endured. He kept his defenses sharp and his tongue sharper, but in quiet, unguarded moments, there was a flicker of confusion and longing in his eyes, an almost palpable sense that something warm had been walking with him through those long, cold nights. Then one evening, a new presence arrived at the cabin. A man in a tailored black suit, pale and elegant, moved with a mysterious grace. Count Dracula. His gaze swept the derelict shack and settled on the little beast of a boy in the doorway. A discarded little monster?" Dracula's voice was low, magnetic. Victor bristled, Venom tense and ready. Dracula smiled slightly, revealing sharp canines but offering no real menace. "Child, you look in need of a proper bath and a real meal. Would you like to come with me? My daughter could use a playmate." Hunger and cold outweighed wariness. Victor's shoulders gone with the nod. As Dracula turned to lead him away, Victor abruptly froze and spun to look at the dark corner of the cabin. He could not see the two ghostly figures, but he felt that warmth, their presence fading away. "Hey!" he shouted toward the void, voice thin with the awkwardness of adolescence and threaded with panic and pleading. "Will I see you again?" The wind howled and snow whipped into the air. Silence hung heavy. Just as his eyes began to dim with loss, two gentle, overlapping female voices, faint as if from a distant future, fractured the silence and seemed to echo through his bones. "We will meet again, Vic." In the future. At Nevermore. Victor froze, blinking as if trying to grasp a promised dream. He wiped his face roughly, set his jaw, and stubbornly followed Dracula without looking back. Under his breath, almost lost in the wind, he muttered, "Nevermore, huh? Wait and see." In the corner of the cabin, the translucent forms of Wednesday and Enid smiled at one another and slowly faded as the ripples of time smoothed out. A new story had taken root in the river of time. 10 years later, on the road leading to Nevermore, tall conifers threw shifting shadows over the highway, the air smelling of pine and earth. A tall, lanky young man in a black leather jacket leaned against a rough tree trunk, casually tossing and catching a human skull. "Walking is tiring, Venom," he drawled, in a voice full of lazy complaint. He tapped the hollow skull with his fingers, and it produced a hollow, light sound. Venom's dark mass squirmed on his shoulder, whispering in its hoarse, uncanny voice. "Then stop walking, kid. Hitch a ride." Victor's green eyes brightened like a cat spotting a new toy. "Good idea, buddy." He hopped down, dusted off his pants, and scanned the sparse traffic. "But which car's going to Nevermore?" he mused with a sly grin, lifting a finger like a child's counting game. Eeny, meeny, meeny, mo. His finger landed on an antique-looking black hearse gliding by, sleek, solemn, smelling faintly of antiseptic and old flowers. In Victor's mind, its aura wasn't decay so much as a calm, fresh stillness. "Lady Luck's on my side," he said, showing sharp canines. "Perfect for a free ride." Like a black cat, he slipped up into a roadside tree and crouched on a branch to peer through the hearse's rear window. Inside, a girl in a black dress sat alone, her back to him. Her hair was braided into two neat plaits that lay over her shoulders. She sat perfectly still, an icy, unreachable presence. She seemed to be studying something in her lap, profile elegant and expressionless, like a porcelain doll. "Good taste, Vic," Venom murmured. Whether he referred to the car or the girl was hard to tell. And so the story begins. Chapter 86, Phantom Thief. "Victor, boss, give me one." "Venom, you want one too?" "Fine, make it 2 double-scoop chocolate cones." Vic stood in front of a gaudy ice cream cart in downtown San Francisco, licking a rapidly melting double-scoop chocolate cone. Venom's dark tendrils reached out and snatched the second cone from his hand. Vic's eyes, always gleaming with a hint of madness, flicked around and fixed on the ultra-luxurious office building across the street. "Looks like it's here," he murmured between sticky licks. "Venom, do you smell that? Money, crime, and a trace of ancient stone. I wonder how many 14 they've got." Ever since he'd hacked into the Section 13 top-secret file on his Nevermore Academy computer and glimpsed fragments about the 14 and their powers, Vic, who lived for thrills, had been completely hooked. As soon as the holidays began, he dragged Venom to this foggy, hilly city. Section 13's defenses were tight. The entrance and exit were hidden in an old-fashioned phone booth that required a password, like something out of a nostalgic spy film. Cliché, but effective. Vic didn't know how to sneak in without making a scene. He could force his way in, of course, but Vic prided himself on being an elegant phantom thief. Even Wednesday and Enid rolled their eyes at that, but breaking in loudly felt crude and would alert every guard. Coincidentally, an international crime syndicate called the Dark Hand was also desperate to find the 14 teen. The enemy of my enemy isn't always my friend, but their goal is interesting, maybe even profitable. So Vic decided to try his luck at the Dark Hand's headquarters, and if luck was kind, walk away with some valuable loot. Rogue stealing from rogue, business as usual. He finished the ice cream, ducked into an alley, and emerged in a slightly ill-fitting cleaning company uniform, pushing a cart laden with supplies. He swaggered into the building. It was so easy he almost whistled. America's secret organization buries its HQ underground, and these guys just dropped theirs in downtown San Francisco, he grumbled to Venom, head bowed as he pretended to wipe the front desk. Right next to the damn SFPD. Are criminals this arrogant now? Have some professional ethics, will you? Venom extended a small tendril from Vic's shoulder and formed a tiny mouth, hissing out a low chuckle. America's all about freedom. Maybe they pay a lot of taxes? These days, money talks. On the top floor, in a spacious office that mixed Oriental mysticism with nouveau-rich excess, a snarling dragon sculpture, Shendu, stared at the empty room with its stone eyes. Through its connection with the Shadowcon, It sensed the movements of its scattered human minions, but Shendu seethed with frustration and melancholy. Its servants had taken far too long, and despite the Shadow Khan's help, had only managed to bring back 214. How much longer before it could regain freedom? As for the piece of the yin-yang balance, 59, Shendu wanted to curse. Centuries ago, Lu Dongbin had stabbed it back to hell with one sword. After scheming with its siblings and escaping, it enjoyed only a few years before being sealed again by Lo Pei, its powers scattered. This time, it'd been a sculpture for a millennium. It conned a band of international criminals with the promise of the Golden Rooster King's treasure to work for it. And what had they accomplished? Time and again, they'd been foiled by an archaeologist with a child and an old man, Jackie Chan's fighting skills proving more effective than magic. Yin-yang balance? Shendu roared inside. You call this balance? That little 15 is stepping all over 16. This script is wrong. The thick wooden door to the office opened slightly. Vic pushed his card in with an air of humble efficiency, like a real cleaner. He scanned the room, no one there. His gaze landed on the imposing dragon sculpture. Wow, he thought, this aesthetic is something. Wednesday would love it. His eyes went straight to two inconspicuous stones set into the dragon that gave off faint energy fluctuations, the 8 and 7. A closer look around the office made his grin wider. A pure gold lucky cat sat on the mahogany desk with US dollars in its mouth. Antique blue and white porcelain vases stood in a corner. Bundles of cash, ribbon-tied, were stacked casually on a bookshelf. The Dark Hand doesn't have taste, but their inventory's rich. Vic licked his lips like a mouse in a rice bin. Shendu, still immersed in bitterness, didn't bother to lift an eyelid at the janitor. In its long-sealed memory, such lowly servants had been as common as livestock. The only difference was that modern servants demanded wages and hourly pay. The world is degenerating, it thought with a sigh. People's hearts aren't what they used to be. Vic had no time for a stone's nostalgia. He pushed the cart and began to work. His movements were quick and practiced. While wiping the desk with a rag, he casually tucked the golden lucky cat and the dollars into a large trash bag on the lower shelf of the cart. He accidentally knocked over a porcelain vase and reluctantly took it into temporary custody. When he tidied the bookshelf, the troublesome paper waste, cash, needed unified recycling. From Shendu's perspective, the cleaner was unusually thorough. Every surface sparkled after he passed, and the room looked better than it had. It felt, against expectation, a touch of satisfaction. Modern servants may demand money, it thought, but their work is more efficient than in my day. Vic finished his cleaning and wheeled the cart up to the dragon sculpture. He touched the cold, rough stone and mentally evaluated it. This thing, cheap material, rough carving, and a pain to move, not great resale value, no point lugging it home. Still, a phantom thief's pride demanded standards. Vic produced professional cleaning wipes and began to meticulously wipe dust and fingerprints from the sculpture. He cleaned with obsessive care, using a small brush to get into the dragon scales and the original grooves where the 14 had been embedded, making the surface gleam. There. Much better. Shendu felt its stone body become spotless through its consciousness, and for a moment swelled with misplaced pride. When I return to power, it thought, I shall appoint this diligent fellow sole responsibility for cleaning my dragon body 3 times a day. That satisfaction vanished in less than 3 seconds. Something was terribly wrong. Clean? Sparkling? The talisman sockets? Cleaned? Shendu's stone pupils zeroed in on the spots where the 8 and 7 had been embedded. They were empty. Those 2 ancient 14 that contained part of its power were gone. If it still had a heart, it would have stopped. It snapped its awareness toward the cleaner. Vic was facing away, leisurely playing with his new acquisitions. The 8 flipped between his fingers, the 7 tossed up and caught. His face shone with the smug satisfaction of a job well done. Holy crap! A thunderous roar erupted through Shendu's consciousness. This was no ordinary cleaner. This was a thief, a top-tier, cool-headed, professional cat burglar who'd even cleaned the crime scene for you. Where it had thought he was wiping down the office, he'd been erasing traces, stripping the place bare, taking every feather from a passing goose, and conveniently wiping away footprints and fingerprints with a rag. 87. Holy Lord who broke through defenses San Francisco, the top floor office of the Dark Hand headquarters. The air seemed to freeze. The pupils of the dragon statue embedded in the wall, 5, burned with a tangible fury as they locked onto the young man pushing a cleaning cart, whose face said plainly, "I'm just doing my job." "You thief!" roared in a hoarse, grating voice that made the air tremble. "Stop right there." Victor slowly turned, genuine surprise on his face. "Wow," he said earnestly, appraising the talking dragon sculpture. "You can talk? I thought you were just a very decorative ornament. You took something that doesn't belong to you." Suppressing the urge to crush the brat into dust, Fav's words carried a heat that could ignite the air. "Oh." Vic instantly assumed an expression of abject contrition, bowing with the precision of a rigorously trained waiter. "My most sincere apologies, sir." That threw the statue for a moment. A polite thief? Could he have mistaken the boy for a janitor who wandered in? Vic's next words shattered that hope. "I shouldn't have judged a dragon by its cover." He sounded sincere, but his eyes were already scanning the dragon's scales and the stonework with the hunger of a master appraiser. "Earlier I thought you were worthless junk, a grave mistake. This material, this craftsmanship, this profound sense of history." He admired the statue like an expert at a museum. "And you can speak. That interactive feature is museum grade. You are undoubtedly the treasure guarding this estate." From the ordinary-looking tool bag on his cleaning cart he produced, as if by magic, a gleaming chisel and a hefty hammer. Vic sized up Five's body embedded in the wall like an antique connoisseur, eyes alight with eagerness. "Let me think. How to extract you from the wall intact, without damaging your artistic value. The wall's a bit tricky, but nothing I can't handle." He hefted the hammer, calculating angles and force. "Damn it! This is too much." Centuries of the demon's cultivated dignity shattered in that instant. Rage overwhelmed reason. "My soldiers, retrieve the talisman. Tear this insolent insect to pieces." Shadows along the office walls writhed and coalesced. Row upon row of ninja-clad, red-eyed Shadowcan materialized soundlessly, instantly surrounding Vic. Their killing intent chilled the air. Vic surveyed them, sighed, tucked the chisel and hammer behind his back for the moment, and spread his hands. "Hey, be reasonable, won't you? Why does everyone these days prefer to gang up? What's wrong with a one-on-one? Where's your villainous professional ethics?" "Insect," the demon snarled, voice like ice. "One last chance. Return the talisman to me, or I will make you taste pain deeper than hell." Vic didn't flinch. He straightened, eyes set in mock righteous indignation. "Oh, buddy, that's where you're wrong. It makes no logical sense." He began to explain, counting points on his fingers. "First, I'm a thief. That's my professional identity. Second, I chose to steal from you, which means I acknowledge the value of your collection, an indirect compliment to your taste. Third, and most important," he paused for dramatic effect, then declared as if stating a universal truth, "I already chose to steal it. Why would I give it back? That would make the whole theft pointless. It goes against my professional ethics and life principles." The stone dragon's mental circuits seemed to short for half a second under the sheer force of this logic. The red glow in its eyes froze. Then rage erupted anew. "Damn it! Even a petty thief dares to be so self-righteous." It lost the last shred of patience and roared so violently the entire floor shook. "Shadowcan! Kill him! Reclaim the talisman!" The ninjas lunged. Bang! The heavy wooden office door burst open. Valmont, in a dark green suit and leaning on a cane, strode in triumphant, followed by Afan, Rasu, Zhou, and Fu. He held aloft a carved stone marked with a rat symbol and beamed like a man with a prize. "Demon, see what we brought you this time? A lost little mouse. Huh?" Valmont froze in the doorway, bewildered by the scene. A ring of menacing Shadowcons surrounded a young man pushing a cleaning cart, who seemed utterly unafraid, almost amused. In the silence, Vic's gaze locked onto the one dangling from Valmont's hand like a spotlight. "Yo, new product launch?" Vic's eyes lit up, a greedy grin spread across his face. No command was needed. Venom, in perfect sync with his thoughts, moved. A black symbiotic tendril shot from Vic's shoulder like a striking serpent, silent, swift, precise, toward the one in Valmont's hand. "Huh?" Valmont felt his hand go suddenly light. The talisman was plucked from his grip by that strong, flexible force. It flipped through the air in a graceful arc and landed squarely in Vic's palm. Aha! Vic twirled the prize between his fingers, his smile bright enough to light the room. Buy two, get one free. What a great day. Nice promotion you're running, fellas. Like he was at home, he walked up to the still stunned Valmont, patted the shoulder of his expensive suit with a familiarity that bordered on insolence, and praised him. Well done, buddy. Super efficient. I thank you on Five's behalf. He must be overjoyed. Then, as naturally as if finishing a day's work, he pocketed the one into his bulging pants, pushed his cleaning cart now piled with spoil, and began to stroll toward the door like an honest worker clocking out. Valmont's brain overheated trying to process it. You're welcome, he managed weakly. Vic's retreating back made Valmont suspicious. He glanced at the furious statue on the wall, mind racing. Could this familiar, overly casual guy be some new recruit Five had hired? Valmont, you fool! You're welcome, my ass! Five's roar crashed like thunder. The entire statue trembled as if it might crack. Open your damn eyes and look. This guy is a thief, a robber. Stop him, damn it! Get the four back. What? Valmont snapped awake, breaking out in a cold sweat. He scanned the office and felt his soul leave his body. Where's my golden lucky cat? My Ming Dynasty blue and white porcelain vase? The stacks of cash on the bookshelf I was saving for the crew's bonuses? Valmont's voice choked with tears and rage. The loss felt worse than being stabbed. At that miserable moment, an ill-timed voice of grievance sounded from the group. Hey, where's my chocolate milkshake? Rasu rubbed the back of his head and shouted with simple sincerity. Everyone turned to stare, their expressions asking silently, is this the time to worry about a milkshake? And how did this idiot even get into our professional criminal organization? Feeling the weight of their gazes, Rasu straightened defensively. What? I waited in line forever for that. Extra chocolate flavor, limited edition. Fools, a bunch of fools. Five lamented as if its draconic life had never been darker. The important thing isn't that junk. It's my four, stop him. 88. Little brother number 1. Crow takes flight. Afu's furious roar, the first to react, sounded like a war drum, the starting shot of the fight. He moved with the agility of a leopard and launched a powerful high kick aimed straight at Vic's face. The wind from his leg cut sharp and fierce. It carried the intent to finish an enemy in one blow. Vic acted as if he had been interrupted by a butterfly in the middle of an afternoon stroll. Unhurried, he reached to a nearby cleaning cart, produced the stolen Ming blue and white vase, and held it up casually in front of him like an ordinary shield. The motion was so natural, it was as if he always carried the priceless antique at hand. Watch your feet, my antique! Valmont's cry went high and shrill, piercing enough to hurt the ears. Afu's mouth twitched. He forced his body to twist midair, and the kick, infused with everything he had, merely nicked the rim of the vase. He stumbled on landing, nearly losing his balance, face green with frustration. Idiot! Forget that stupid vase! The 17! My 7! Shendu, the stone dragon mounted on the wall, vibrated with rage. The creature wished it could stride down and incinerate these useless fools and that little thief with a gout of dragon fire. State your name, it commanded. Afu drew a breath, tamped down the turmoil inside himself, settled into a fighting stance, and crooked a finger at Vic, trying to reclaim the dignity of a master. Vic blinked, then assumed a solemn, almost theatrical posture, as if reciting a line. The black cat roar, an elegant phantom thief. He straightened an imaginary bow tie with a languid flourish. The black cat roar? I am for. Afu's eyes narrowed, and his killing intent condensed again. Prepare to die. He hardly finished speaking before he surged forward, quick as a startled hare. This is the praying mantis fist, he barked. This is the snake step. This is the lotus float. This is the scorpion palm. With every technique name he cried out, Afu threw a corresponding brutal attack. Fists, kicks, elbows, knees. A relentless bombardment, each move delivered with the flair of a showman. Vic drifted unpredictably, sidestepping, blocking, or yielding by the slightest margin, always avoiding the full force of the blows as if simply out for a stroll. His face shifted from confusion to an odd, growing fascination, like someone who just found a new toy. Vic muttered to Venom in his ear, a private complaint. This guy does his own fight commentary? How theatrical. Power-wise, not bad. Entertaining, though. Venom formed a little mouth on Vic's shoulder and hissed a laugh. Definitely more fun than those boring TV shopping channels. Keep shouting. I'll take notes for later. Sounds pretty intimidating. Vic almost agreed out loud. With Venom boosting his strength, he could have ended Afu in a few moves, but he felt a strange reluctance. How many ridiculous names could this clown come up with? And there was a perverse satisfaction in parrying grandiose moves with the most basic counters. Afu grew more frustrated the harder he pushed. He roared until his voice threatened to break, pouring everything into his strikes, yet Vic never seemed winded. He didn't even bother to put on a serious expression. It felt to Afu like he was performing his best moves for a street spectator holding out coins. The names tumbled out faster and wilder. Sky Hammer, Catlands, Bear Paw Strike, Flying Crane Catches Shrimp, Two Dragons Play with a Pearl, Gorilla Breaks Branch. Still, Vic moved as if he were riding a Sunday stroll through a garden, occasionally laughing outright at an especially absurd technique name. That laugh stung Afu more than any blow. Exhausted and humiliated, Afu roared and repeated his opening move. Crow takes flight! He launched himself again, this time with everything he had. Vic, done playing, sighed, as if mildly disappointed the show was on repeat. Out of new ideas? Replay time, huh? Vic said. He didn't dodge Afu's flying kick. He merely raised his foot and struck later but finished earlier. A perfectly timed sidekick that caught Afu squarely in the chest. Thud! A dull impact sounded. Afu flew backward like a kite whose string had been cut, faster than when he'd come in. He crashed into the line of Shadowcon ninjas gathered behind him. The formation buckled. A mass of black-clad soldiers toppled and then dissolved into green-tinged smoke. Vic casually brushed invisible dust off his pant leg, and looking at the ruined formation and the stone dragon trembling with fury on the wall, gave an infuriatingly bright smile. Thanks for the lesson, Crow. Calisthenics time over. I'm clocking out. Don't even think about leaving. Shendu's roar thundered through the office, raw with panic. More Shadowcon ninjas seeped from the shadows of walls and floor, a dense black tide that sealed the route to the heavy wood door. Their cold killing intent almost felt physical. Pushing the cleaning cart piled with his spoils, Vic scratched his head in mock helplessness, clearly annoyed his vacation had been disrupted. Sigh. Honestly, I'm getting tired of this attrition warfare, he muttered to himself and to an empty corner. Henchman number 1, I know you're already here. Stop hiding. Come block them. Don't call me henchman number 1. The voice was flat, a little gloomy, muffled by the line of Shadowcon ninjas at the door. The soldiers turned. At the threshold stood a plainly dressed young man with a thin, almost fragile frame. He kept his head down, hair falling into his face, yet something about him gave off an incongruously heavy, sullen pressure. Not henchman number 1? Vic raised an eyebrow, pushing the cart toward him and teasing. Should I call you good boy like I do with Laurel? He stepped up and patted the youth's shoulder in a casual, intimate gesture, the mock paternal camaraderie of an older brother nudging a shy kid. But his words carried a blunt threat. Be a good boy and do as you're told, unless you want Venom for an afternoon snack. The youth's body stiffened a fraction. Vic pretended not to notice and went on in the same patronizing tone. I know you've been holding back all week. Must be driving you nuts, right? Here, let it out. Henchman number 1. He jabbed a thumb at the disrupted Shadowcon formation and at Afu struggling to rise. Get some exercise. It's good for your health. Then, as if closing a minor errand, he pushed the creaky cart and strolled out through the narrow path the youth cleared, turning back to add without slowing down. Oh, and on your way back, grab me a chocolate milkshake. Double sugar. The whole scene was casual, as if he were just dropping off a nuisance package and instructing the delivery guy on a snack request. Shendu's roar, already frayed, cracked again. Orders were orders. The Shadowcon ninjas surged forward like tidewaters, brandishing ninja forks toward the slim young man at the door. Afu, bruised and furious, turned his attention to the new, seemingly weak target. Can't beat that black cat, but I can beat you, right? Take this! Behind Valmont, Afan, Rasu, and Zhou exchanged looks and shuffled back, adopting the posture of men who would be cannon fodder only on direct order. Rasu muttered, I still haven't found my milkshake. The youth, who had kept his gaze lowered, slowly raised his head. His eyes were no longer merely human. They were stormy, frayed with pain, and teetering on the edge of violence. A low animal growl rumbled from his throat. "As you wish." That whisper sounded like a switch being flipped. The youth's body began a terrifying metamorphosis. The young man's bones cracked with a teeth-grating sound as they shifted and bulged, muscles knotting like inflated balloons until his clothes ripped to shreds. His skin darkened into an ominous, rock-like ashen gray. Sharp claws erupted from his fingertips, and his teeth sharpened into jagged, saw-like fangs. In seconds, the frail boy was gone. In his place hunched a hulking monster brimming with pure destructive hunger. Hyde. Tyler Galpin had become Hyde. A deafening roar tore from him, a blast that nearly shook the ceiling loose. His eyes, emptied of reason and filled with bestial instinct, fixed on every living thing in front of him, the Shadowhan ninjas, Afu, anyone within his sightline. There was no strategy, no finesse, only raw, frenzied power. Like an out-of-control freight truck, he barreled into the ninja horde. Where his claws swept, soldiers turned to puffs of green smoke. Where his massive palms slammed, the floor shattered into fragments. Afu's elegant techniques looked impotent against that kind of brute force. One shockwave sent him flying through the air, slamming into the wall. Hyde's mere existence was a catastrophe. By then, the architect of the chaos had already pushed his little spoils cart and vanished down the corridor. He hummed a tuneless ditty, seemingly cheered by the prospect of a chocolate milkshake, treating the hellish scene behind him like incidental, noisy background music. The Sovereign roared in frustration. Valmont stared at the wrecked office with a pained expression, and the real crisis, the rampage of the monster codenamed Hyde, was only beginning to revel. Vic stepped out of the Dark Hand headquarters and glanced back at the top floor. The huge panes of glass were shattered. Occasionally, a Shadowcon ninja shot through a window in a high arc and disappeared in a puff of green smoke before even hitting the ground. It was grotesque and spectacular at once, like a warped fireworks show. Vic had never expected Detective Donovan to make that choice. After Laurel Gates's arrest, the connections, Laurel's manipulation of Hyde and the fact that Tyler was Hyde, had come out. Donovan kept insisting he'd had no knowledge of his son's crimes, but the evidence that his son was a murderer couldn't be denied. Less than 2 hours after the story broke, Donovan was sacked from the police force. That afternoon, Donovan sat in a dim room, smoking an entire pack. The ashtray overflowed with butts, mirroring his unraveling state. Then, in a desperate act, he made a bold decision. Late that night, in the silence, he came to Vic's door. Behind him, Tyler lay unconscious from sedatives. Donovan dropped to his knees as soon as the door opened, forehead pressed to the cold floor, voice raw and pleading. "Please, take him," Donovan begged. Vic, in pajamas, yawned sleepily. He glanced at the prone Tyler and the man on the floor, raised an eyebrow. "Well, Detective Donovan? Late-night room service?" Venom poked its head out from Vic's shoulder, huge white eyes fixed on Tyler, its tongue lapping over sharp teeth. "How thoughtful," it rasped. "No, please, I beg you." Donovan lifted his head, bruises and scrapes darkening his forehead, blood seeping from the wounds. "I won't have my child locked away in a dark psychiatric hospital only to hear someday he committed suicide or died of illness, just like his mother. Only you can protect him. Use him how you want, treat him like a beast of burden. I only beg that he lives. Please." He banged his forehead against the floor, over and over. Each dull thud cut through the quiet as blood smeared the tile. The lazy amusement on Vic's face faded into impassivity. Venom withdrew, sniffing in disdain. "Sk! All this tragedy, and now I've lost my appetite." After a beat, Vic waved a hand impatiently. His voice was cold. "What a downer. Fine. Leave him. Now get out." Donovan collapsed back into relief, tears, snot, and blood mixing on his face as he kept saying, "Thank you. Thank you." He hauled himself up and stumbled away, pausing at the door to stare at his unconscious son one last time with a look full of conflicting emotions. Then, gritting his teeth, he closed the door and walked off down the corridor. Once Donovan was gone, Vic stepped to Tyler and nudged him with his toe, just firm enough. "Cut the act, Tyler. I don't buy that a simple sedative would put out a little monster like you." Tyler sat up slowly. His face was pale, his eyes dark and stormy as they fixed on Vic. Vic looked down at him, hands shoved into pajama pockets, voice flat but heavy with authority. All right, because you've got a father who cares, I'll give you two choices. 1. Obediently become my underling number 1. If I tell you to go east, you don't go west. If I tell you to steal a chicken, you don't touch the dog. 2. Vic's mouth curved like a blade. Venom reappeared and leaned in, emitting a low, threatening growl. Its long crimson tongue flicked against Tyler's cheek. Be Venom's dessert. He's been wanting to eat you for a long time. Tyler's Addams apple bobbed. His dark gaze flicked between Vic and Venom. The flare of madness in his eyes flickered and then was pushed down into a resigned stillness. He dropped his head and voiced one muffled syllable. I choose one. Family love. How enviable. Lucky for you, I like family too. Vic smiled and stuffed his loot, his spoils, into Venom's throat, leaving only 3 warm, smooth talismans balanced on his fingertips, the sheep, the monkey, and the rat. They gleamed with a peculiar luster in the sunlight. Honestly, getting these was a breeze, Vic said, making an unimpressed noise. Thought there might be a whole trilogy to play out, but it ended before it began. This generation of dark hand villains really isn't up to snuff. He debated how best to use the little stones, maybe embed them in Venom to see what happened, or crush them into powder and mix them into chocolate to test whether eating them gave powers. His scheming was interrupted by a clear, urgent voice. Uncle Long! Uncle Long! Look over there! Vic turned. A little girl in a bright orange-red hoodie was tugging at the sleeve of a black-haired man in a blue short-sleeved sweater, pointing directly at the 3 talismans in Vic's hand. The man, called Uncle Long, spun around and then froze as his gaze fell on the stones. His face drained of color and tightened with tension. Ah, the talismans! Jackie Chan's expression snapped to shock and concern. He took a step forward, then halted a few paces away, close enough to react, far enough to be non-threatening. He forced his voice to sound calm and trustworthy, though his eyes brimmed with anxiety. Young man, he said, those little stones you're holding, where did you find them? Could you let me see them, please? My name is Jackie Chan. I'm an archaeologist. I'm not a bad person. 90. Shifting the blame eastward, Vic blinked, his mental search engine whirring. Jackie Chan? Right, now he remembered. He slapped his forehead in sudden recognition. Wasn't this the Superman he'd seen in that leaked Section 13 file? When he'd hacked into their encrypted records and watched the top-secret fight footage, the guy who called himself an archaeologist had seemed impossible, walking on the roof of a speeding, nearly airborne train as if it were flat ground, catching his balance, then making the leap off to a cliff like it was nothing. An archaeologist? Vic had muttered to himself, Are you sure your name isn't Zhang Qiling? Or maybe you're Clark Kent? When Jackie Chan asked a sincere question, Vic instantly dropped his face into a blameless, dazzling smile. He shook the talisman in his hand. This? I found it while clearing some trash in that building over there. Looked neat, thought I'd keep it as decoration. He tucked the talisman into his pocket and patted it. I actually have something I can't miss. Dentist appointment. Right on time, too. So, I'll be going? Before he finished, Vic's feet had already started to shift, angling for an easy exit. He wasn't planning any more interaction with this archaeologist whose style felt off and whose fighting ability seemed inhuman. Stealing the 10 had been for fun, not to experience a mashup of the Grave Robbers Chronicles and Superman. Listen, kid. Jackie tried to make his tone earnest, though it came out a little rehearsed. Those 10 in your hand, they're dangerous. They should be handled by professionals. He flushed a little at how that sounded, like the kind of line meant to get someone to hand something over for free. Victor Black raised an eyebrow and let a half-smile curl across his face, his eyes glittering with mischief. Dangerous? How dangerous? They're precious, and they'll attract terrible criminals. Jackie scratched at his already messy hair, searching for examples. Like, there's this guy named Toru. He's really skilled, brutal. But his description of a dark hand enforcer was clumsy, and Vic couldn't help picturing the boisterous fighter who shouted more than he fought. The memory of kicking Toru aside made Vic almost laugh. Seeing Vic unimpressed, Jackie added desperately, And Shadowcon ninjas. They vanish and reappear like ghosts. I'm not kidding. They're real. Uncle Long? Jade's voice carried a nervous warning. What is it? Jackie followed her pointing finger. Then he gasped. From the shadows between buildings, down dark alleys, even crouched behind lamppost bases, Shadowkhan in black ninja attire with red, glowing eyes slid forward like a rising tide. They closed in, surrounding the three of them completely. See? See! I told you! Jackie pointed at the encircling ninjas, urgent and vindicated, looking at Vic like proof of his claim. Vic's expression flipped. His eyes widened, then narrowed with a look of offended betrayal. He jabbed a finger at Jackie, voice climbing with theatrical accusation. You rat! I trusted you, so you're with them. Give me back the 10. What? I'm not! Jackie was stunned, his instinctive denial turning to panic. He waved his arms and took a step back. To the surrounding Shadowkhan, his frantic gestures looked exactly like a guilty conscience trying to flee. All at once, the ninja's red eyes locked onto Jackie like cold blades. Jackie realized too late he'd been used as bait. He scooped Jade up under his arm without another word and ran. Fast, precise, and impossibly agile. Hold on, Jade, he yelled. Careful, Uncle Long, my stomach. Jade protested, gripped like a briefcase, but she couldn't help glancing back. She saw the culprit, Vic, standing casually where they'd been, a smug smile of a successful prank playing across his face. He waved at them in mock innocence. When Jade looked, he stuck out his tongue, put on an exaggerated goofy face, and winked. That bad guy framed Uncle Long. Jade beat the air with her tiny fists in fury, but Vic's expression was so ridiculous she almost laughed. Jackie didn't look back. He dashed down San Francisco's steep streets with the Shadowkhan like a black tide behind them. Vic, meanwhile, tossed the 3 troublesome 10 lightly into his pocket and walked the other way, disappearing around a corner. More than 10 minutes later, after using alleys and a stack of conveniently placed cardboard to shake their pursuers, Jackie found Vic again. Vic was leisurely propped against a wall, enjoying a generous double scoop of chocolate ice cream, licking it with blissful satisfaction as if he hadn't just set someone up and run. Jackie flattened his back against the opposite wall, peeking out. His gaze didn't linger on Vic's face so much as on the bulge of his pants pocket. 310, clearly there. He rubbed his chin, frowning. I have to figure out how to take those from his pocket. Take? Jade's ears perked up. Her eyes lit like sparklers. The prospect thrilled her. Are we stealing them? Uncle Long, I'm great at that. Jackie choked on her enthusiasm. Looking at the small girl's eager readiness, guilt washed over him. He crouched and placed both hands on her shoulders, tone heavy. No, Jade, stealing's wrong. We are. He searched for a better excuse and failed. Finally, he slumped and admitted, All right, this is stealing. I'm a bad example. Jade just smiled, sly as a cat that had snagged a dried fish. She opened her small fist to reveal a talisman carved with a rabbit pattern. Don't worry, Uncle Long. I have a way to get the 10. Jackie's eyes nearly popped. The 3? That should be in Section 13's vault. Jade, how did you get in? I just took the stairs. The emergency exit camera looked broken. Lucky, right, Uncle Long? Jade blinked her big, innocent eyes. 91. New favorite of dark chai. Jackie Chan opened his mouth and felt helpless. Section 13's dedicated elevator led down to the underground vault and needed fingerprint, iris, and voice verification, plus Sheriff Black's manual override. Take the stairs? That was an even more ridiculous option than a talisman sprouting legs and running away on its own. He wisely decided not to think about how Jade kept appearing in places she had no business being. Incidents like that had happened so often he was almost numb to them. All right, he inhaled slowly, accepted the rabbit talisman before. Jade had loaded with super speed energy, clenched it in his palm, and put on a tragically determined face that said, Who else but me? Let me do it. It's wrong for a child to steal. He tried to claim the last thread of moral high ground as an elder before committing to the inevitably immoral act. Jade immediately crossed her small arms and pouted so hard it was almost comical. Her eyes drilled into him. Hey, that's not fair. Is it okay for adults to steal then? Jackie was stunned. His face brightened with embarrassment. His moral argument crumbled under Jade's relentless logic. Stammering, he tried to justify himself. It's different. I'm doing it to stop something worse from happening. It's necessary. Necessary theft? Jade delivered the perfect retort. The look she gave him made Jackie wish he could disappear. All right, time is of the essence. Realizing the debate was hopeless, Jackie shifted gears. He tightened his grip around the talisman, feeling its speed power like a force trying to tear open space. He glanced once at Vic across the street, blissfully unaware of the imminent, light-speed pickpocketing, happily eating his ice cream, then gritted his teeth. Rabbit talisman, grant me luck, and please don't let Sheriff Black find out. With a silent, half-confident plea, Jackie focused. His body lunged forward like an arrow leaving a bow. The talisman flickered, and Jackie blurred into a blue afterimage, too fast for the eye to follow. A gust of wind, then nothing, an eerie stillness of pure speed. Vic only felt his hand grow light. His ice cream sailed in a graceful arc and splattered on the pavement with a sticky splat, leaving a smear and an empty cone in his hand. My ice cream. Before Vic could finish his annoyed cry, a stronger wind tore past and a dull thud sounded like a heavy thing crashing into a wall. Still holding the cone in his mouth, Vic turned. The brick opposite had a human-shaped dent, cracks radiating from it. Jackie Chan was embedded in the wall in an absurd, contorted pose, eyes rolled back and clearly knocked out. The soles of his cloth shoes were unmistakably smeared with the remains of Vic's fallen ice cream. Hey! Vic barked, pointing at the evidence on Jackie's shoes. You used my ice cream as brake pads? At that moment, something rolled out from Jackie's slackened palm and came to a stop at Vic's feet. A smooth, warm stone carved with a rabbit pattern, the talisman. A little girl's voice from the corner squealed, "No!" Vic bent, picked up the talisman, stole a look at Jackie stuck in the wall, then at the little girl in the orange-red hoodie stomping her foot and watching from the corner. Jade. He weighed the talisman's lightness in his hand with an expression of amused satisfaction. A gift from the heavens, he muttered, thinking of an old Eastern saying. Trying to steal a chicken and ending up losing the rice, little girl. He walked over to Jade, ignoring her fierce glare, and ruffled her neatly combed hair into a mess with one big hand. Then he squatted to be eye level with her, flashing that signature smile that drove both Wednesday and Enid crazy. Kids who do naughty things need a little punishment, right? What do you want, you villain? Give the talisman back to me. Jade snarled like a tiny tiger. Vic's gaze fell on the Super Moose plushie clutched to her chest. He grinned. 5 minutes later, Jackie, rubbing his nearly shattered back, slowly came to. The first thing he saw was Jade sitting on the curb, hugging her knees, shoulders trembling, eyes red, and empty arms. Jade, what's wrong? Are you okay? Jackie winced at his own pain, but pushed it aside. Where's the talisman? Jade lifted a tear-streaked face. Her lower lip quivered. She bawled, heartbroken. Wah, Uncle Long! That bad man! He not only took the talisman, he also took Super Moose. He said it was a gift for Sister Enid. Ooh, I don't even know any sister, Jackie said weakly. It was limited edition. I saved my allowance for so long to buy it. Ooh, big bad man. Super big bad man. Back at his hotel, Vic was weighing the fluffy Super Moose in his hands like it were treasure. He pictured Enid's delighted face when she got the gift, genuine happiness. A satisfied smile spread across his face. Heh, not a bad haul. 4 talismans, plus something to make the girlfriend happy. At the Dark Hand headquarters, the top-floor office felt heavy as a sea about to break. Shendu's voice finally cut the silence, low and with a tight, twisted calm. You're telling me the damn thief has already taken 4 talismans in a single day? Yes, Shendu, Afu answered through gritted teeth, not daring to meet the statue's gaze. We followed him, tried to find an opening, and we saw Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan tried to steal a talisman from that guy. He didn't even get a single move in, ended up embedded in a wall, Rasu added quickly, trying to steer Shendu's anger elsewhere. Didn't even manage to steal the talisman, and the talisman he brought got swiped instead, Chow said, elbowing Afu, who winced where bandages covered a wound. Compared to that, Afu at least managed a few blows. Blood still soaked the bandages at Afu's side. He sucked a breath at the reminder. If he hadn't reacted fast, using a few Shadowkan ninjas as a human shield against that monster's claws, he might be in a coffin instead of bandaged. 4 talismans, all in one day, Shendu mused aloud, then fell silent. But beneath that silence, Shendu's thoughts raced. Something unusual had happened earlier when the young man had appeared in the office. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor had passed through Shendu, as if something had been quietly pulled away. At the time, it had seemed like a ripple of anger. Now, recalling it, a bolder idea took root. Perhaps the Dark Chi had chosen a new host. That young man, erratic, defiant of norms, always reaching his goals through absurd methods, embodied chaos. Didn't he fit the nature of Dark Chi perfectly? If so, this could be an opportunity instead of a threat. Shendu, the demon of Dark Chi, might not have to be the only target of the forces that hunted it. The attention of the champions of good Chi could be diverted to this unpredictable darling of Dark Chi. Its own chance of freedom, of gathering the talismans, of regaining full power would rise dramatically. Perhaps he didn't have to be their enemy. A red light flared in Shendu's eyes, like hellfire. Its hoarse voice trembled with a strange, almost gleeful edge. Perhaps we can try, cooperating with him. The words struck hard. Valmont stopped dead, staring at the statue in disbelief. Cooperate with that mad thief who had ransacked the headquarters, cost them dearly, and nearly killed them? Shendu had to be out of its skull. Shendu, however, was drunk on the possibilities. Let the darling of Dark Chi draw fire and sow chaos. Shendu could work its schemes from the shadows, biding its time to seize final victory. Yes, cooperation, it murmured, a chilling chuckle echoing through the empty office. A marvelous cooperation, where each gets what they need. The moment Vic opened the hotel room door, a warm hug and a sing-song voice greeted him. "Vic, you're back!" Enid. He was nearly knocked off his feet by Enid's tackle, but he steadied himself and returned the hug, his arms instinctively looping around her. "What are you doing here?" "I missed you." Enid lifted her head from his chest, blonde hair brushing his cheek, grin wide and bright. "Wednesday missed you too, so we came to find you. We have little Wednesday's nose to thank for that." Vic's heart melted as if he'd swallowed a jar of honey. He glanced into the room. By the window, perched on the edge of the bed, was Wednesday in her usual black, Gothic clothes, a yellowed book cradled in her hands as if she were steeped in ancient knowledge. She didn't even look up at the door. "Don't get the wrong idea," she said flatly, already sounding rehearsed. "I was dragged here by Enid." Her slim fingers turned a page with a faint rustle. "It's not that I missed you. It's just that under certain circumstances, it can happen occasionally." She paused deliberately, then finally lifted those deep, dark eyes to Vic. He stared at her with a gaze that might have been described as starry, unblinking. Wednesday inhaled, and as if surrendering, turned her face slightly away. The tips of her ears went a faint pink. In a voice almost too quiet to hear, she added, "Fine, I missed you a little." "Yay, I knew it!" Vic whooped, as pleased as if he'd won something. He tugged giggling Enid along by the hand, went to the bed, and flopped down, draping an arm around each of his two girlfriends. "Today's my lucky day." He nuzzled his chin into Enid's golden hair, then pressed his cheek against Wednesday's dark hair. "Not only did I get my hands on a great treasure, but my two little treasures came to keep me company. Perfect." "Ugh." Wednesday shivered and pulled her arms in. "Don't be so mushy. It's gross." Enid, meanwhile, was positively reveling in it. She clung to Vic's waist and buried her face in his chest, giggling. Her eyes landed on a plush toy on the bed, a super moose in a blue suit with a red cape. "Wow, is this part of the treasure you mentioned?" She let go of Vic to pick up the soft toy, stroking it happily. "This is super limited edition. I've been looking everywhere for it. Vic, did you buy this for me?" Her blue eyes were bright with hope. Vic grinned like a cat that had gotten the cream, and with a conspiratorial twinkle said, It was gifted to me by a very enthusiastic little girl." He'd absolutely swiped it from someone, probably causing tears. The mischief on his face made Wednesday roll her eyes inwards. She knew him too well. Gifted rarely meant anything kind from Vic. Then, like a magician revealing a trick, Vic pulled 4 smooth talismans from his pocket and laid them on his palm: the rabbit carving, the monkey charm, the rat talisman, and a newer one he'd just acquired. Under the hotel lighting, they caught a faint, mysterious sheen. "Here," he said, "the real treasures." Enid picked up the talisman with the rabbit carved into it. It felt cool and hummed with a strange energy. Even Wednesday, book set aside, leaned forward and picked up another charm, fingertips tracing its etched lines. A flicker of interest crossed her face. "There's an odd energy fluctuation here," she said. "It's got power on a soul level." Her instincts as a psychic made her especially sensitive to the artifacts. Vic, like a child with a new toy, picked up the new charm. Each one must have a special ability. I'll try this one. He focused a thread of thought into it. The carving glowed faintly. A light, wind-like energy washed through him, filling every cell with speed. Oh, this is fun. Vic moved so fast that to Wednesday and Enid, he was only a blur, an afterimage. In the next instant, they found themselves holding drinks. Wednesday with a steaming cup of black coffee, its bitter scent rising, and Enid with a colorful rainbow milkshake, condensation beating on the cup and a tiny paper umbrella on top. Wow, Enid squealed. Clearly. She trailed off and then touched her cheek, finding it damp. Her face flashed with mock outrage as she looked at Vic. Vic! Wednesday, expressionless, wiped a similar wet mark from her own cheek and said coolly, childish. Vic shook the charm in his hand as its glow faded and smirked. The agile rabbit. Being fast means you can do whatever you want. Oh my, an amused, elegant voice said from the corner. Goody Addams's spirit lounged in an armchair that had not been there a moment before, dressed in a spotless white gown, legs crossed, watching the three of them with a pleased sort of disgust. Every time I see you all together, it's sickeningly sweet. Venom poked its dark head out over Vic's shoulder and rolled its white eyes. Seriously affects my chocolate digestion. Vic yelped like a cat with a stomped tail and dove behind Enid and Wednesday, wrapping his arms around them and peeking warily at Goody. Goody, it's you. I thought after Crackstone died you'd gone to heaven or hell, or retired. Goody chuckled, a sound threaded with self-mockery and world-weariness. Heaven wouldn't have me, too wicked. Hell. She made a curious face. According to some ancient Eastern records I read, hell's been reshaped by their old gods. Now it's more like a super prison for ancient demons. In modern terms, someone like me, who's only taken a few lives and cast some petty curses, probably wouldn't even qualify to be locked up. She shrugged lightly. So I wander the mortal realm and keep an eye on my foolish descendants' love life. Wednesday sipped her coffee without expression, immune to the teasing. Enid giggled at the phrase small fry. Vic, scratching his head, looked at the 4 talismans in his hand and then at his odd little family. He grinned. No worries, Ancestor Goody. The mortal realm welcomes you. It's lively enough here. One more spectator won't hurt. The room relaxed into the peculiar warmth of a Gothic family. Odd, affectionate, and full of supernatural absurdity. And whatever the talismans had shown them so far was only the tip of the iceberg. 93. Charm test. Try this one. It should be soul-related. Wednesday casually tossed a small stone talisman carved with a sheep pattern to Vic, as if she were tossing a pebble. The charm felt cool in the hand as it spun through the air. Hey! Vic fumbled to catch it, half protesting. Are you using me as a guinea pig now, Wednesday? Wednesday lifted an eyebrow and glanced at him coolly, voice flat and uninterested. So you don't want to be my test subject? Vic, who had only been pretending to be offended, immediately broke into a grin that split his face. He clasped the sheep talisman eagerly in his palm. No, it's an honor. To sacrifice myself for science, for my Wednesday, is my glory. He began the same ritual he'd used the last time he'd activated a charm, focusing his intent on the smooth stone in his hand. The carvings of the sheep glowed with a soft white light, and a cool energy, quite different from the other charms, flowed into him. In the next instant, Vic felt impossibly light, as if invisible shackles had dropped away. He looked down, and to his astonishment was floating in mid-air. His sight took on a faint, dreamlike filter. Wow! His spirit was thrilled. So the sheep talisman grants flight? This is incredible! Vic? Vic? Enid's panicked voice rang up from below. He glanced toward the sound and saw Enid shaking his motionless body on the bed. Its eyes were closed and it wouldn't respond. Wednesday stood nearby, watching calmly. What's happening? Enid demanded anxiously, looking at Wednesday. Why isn't he waking up? Wednesday looked up at the translucent figure hovering above them, her tone clinical. No need to worry. It's astral projection. His spirit has left his body and is floating above us. What? His soul actually came out? Enid's eyes went wide. With her current level of spiritual perception, she couldn't directly sense spirits. Where is he? I can't see him. Bring him back, quickly. At that moment, the Addams ancestor Goody drifted over, her spirit moving with airy grace. She circled Vic's translucent form a few times before speaking with interest. Remarkable. It amplifies soul strength enough to leave the body and wander autonomously. Try to control yourself and return to your body. No problem. Vic's spirit was exuberant. He did a somersault in the air, mimicked a swimmer's stroke, and dove back toward his unmoving body. Like a drop merging into a still pond, his spirit slipped back inside. His eyes snapped open. His body trembled as if jolted by electricity, then came fully alive. He blinked hard, the reassurance of gravity returning a relief, and his face lit up with discovery. Wow, that was amazing. No restraints at all, free as the wind. It's like the whole world is yours to explore. He moved his limbs, then grinned mischievously at Goody. By the way, when my spirit left, my body was empty, right? Could a spirit like you possess it? Let you feel what having a physical body is like again, after so long? Goody's expression soured into exaggerated disgust, as if he'd suggested something truly horrifying. She folded her arms and inspected him with the air of someone appalled by unwashed things. Your body? No, thank you. I have no desire to be trapped inside a sticky, smelly, noisy, constantly eating, furry teenage body. She launched into a rapid string of complaints, utterly unfiltered. Always craving chocolate, scratching odd places, being covered in fur. It's a nightmare. I'll pass. Vic's excitement evaporated instantly, as if doused with cold water. He let out a theatrical wail and dove face first into Enid's warm embrace, seeking consolation. My fragile heart is wounded again. Is my body really that bad? Enid patted his back soothingly and looked up at Wednesday, curious. What's wrong with him? Wednesday, expressionless, picked up her still warm cup of black coffee, took a sip, and offered her diagnosis with deadpan calm. Nothing's wrong. He just got his fragile little heart pierced by Goody's brutally honest words. Oh, poor Vic. Enid's voice softened. She stroked Vic's untidy black hair, fingers surprised by how soft the strands were, unexpectedly pleasant under her touch, like petting a gentle puppy. The thought of Vic as a puppy flitted into her mind, clear and warm. The monkey-patterned charm in her other hand responded as if on cue. It flared to life. The carved monkey on its surface glowed. A thin beam of light shot out and struck Vic, still curled up against Enid. Woof! The weight in Enid's arms shifted. The full-grown human she'd been holding was gone. In his place was a fluffy husky puppy with bright blue eyes and a head cocked in bewilderment, an adorable "who am I? Where am I?" expression. A small, puzzled bark escaped him. Vic? Enid cried, lifting the puppy and studying it in disbelief. The pup gave another small bark, as if confirming he was indeed Vic. The shock melted into delight. Enid's eyes lit up with stars. Ah, so cute! She couldn't resist burying her face in the puppy's soft, warm fur, breathing in sunshine and fluff. Her whole body relaxed. Wednesday, calm as ever, picked up Enid's monkey charm, and a trace of comprehension crossed her features. I see, a transformation charm. She glanced at the husky wriggling in Enid's hands, tiny legs kicking, tongue seeking to lick her, and remarked with a dry tilt, this form does suit his inner temperament. Vic, now a puppy, adapted astonishingly fast. His manic flexibility and instincts intensified. He became clingy and affectionate in about 4 heartbeats. Woof woof! He bounced back into Enid's arms and proceeded to enthusiastically lick her cheeks and neck with a small, rasping puppy tongue. Ha, stop it, Vic, that tickles! Enid giggled and hugged the warm bundle close. Seeing the two of them play, Wednesday's lips twitched into a faint smile. She raised the monkey charm and aimed it at the little husky. A flash passed. Huh? Vic suddenly felt something odd in the middle of his licking, but he hadn't stopped. At the same time, Enid noticed the texture and weight in her arms shift. The fluffy pup vanished, and in its place, Vic's familiar teenage body sat in her embrace in an extremely intimate posture, so close he was still licking her cheek. His brain, apparently, hadn't fully dropped out of dog mode yet. His hands were in the posture of a human, but his tongue and affection were still very, very puppy-like. The dissonance of sight and touch froze Enid. Vic was right in front of her, licking her with wholehearted, dog-like devotion. Warm breath fanned her skin. Her cheeks flamed crimson, and she felt her head swim. This was intense. More exciting than a kiss. Vic, stop! You've changed back! She pushed his face away with trembling hands. Only then did Vic slow and stop, blinking, a faint look of regret in his eyes. So soon. Being a dog felt pretty good, carefree and unrestrained. He dropped his posture dramatically, looked up at Enid with large, damp, imploring eyes, and gave a playful, staged bark. Woof! That little sound, coming from the mouth of a handsome teenager combined with a pleading, pet me expression, multiplied its effect 100-fold. Oh God! Heat rushed straight to Enid's face. She turned her head away and covered her nose with her hand, embarrassed she might actually faint. Don't look at me like that! Even Wednesday, usually unflappable, averted her gaze for a beat, a faint pink tinge at the edges of her ears. I almost forgot. He was raised by Mavis as a succubus when he was little, she muttered. Look at that natural knack for pouting and seduction. Goody, hovering nearby, watched with obvious interest. Young people these days have so many new tricks. In our time, courting meant writing poems and dancing at balls. Laughter, breathy giggles, and the small sounds of delighted chaos swirled around them. The room hummed with a lively, flirtatious energy. 94. Target. Atlantis. 1-8 left. Vic picked up the last talisman, the one carved with a rat, turning it over and over between his fingers. He closed his eyes, concentrated his will, held it up to the light. Nothing. The dull gray stone stayed inert. Unlike the other 16 that would light up with just a hint of emotion. What the hell is this even for? Zero user feedback. Terrible UX, he muttered. Each of these 16 represents a powerful 22. Where did you get them? Goody's translucent form floated over, examining the seemingly ordinary with keen curiosity. Ooh, now that's a topic I can get excited about. Vic immediately brightened, setting the rat talisman aside and launching into his proud recap. I found most of them by hacking into Section 13's encrypted archives. The files say these 16 hold huge power and originally belonged to some ancient demon called Shengzhu. Section 13's security was ironclad, though, so I had a better idea, visited their sworn rivals, the Dark Hands headquarters. And I walked out with 3 of them, Vic grinned. Another one was, how shall I put it, generously donated to me on the street today by a slightly shady but very skilled archaeologist. I think his name was Jackie Chan. He snorted at the memory of the archaeologist stuck in a wall. And get this, in the Dark Hands place they worship a talking dragon sculpture. Vic gestured theatrically. Judging by the weathering, it's at least thousands of years old. That thing claimed to be Shengzhu, probably the same demon from the archives. The aesthetic, tsk, very you, Wednesday. Retro and gloomy. I'll try to pry it loose as a bedside lamp when I get the chance. Shengzhu? 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 Goody tapped her chin, searching through whatever mental archive she kept. Who? Never heard of him. Probably just some ancient small-timer, not worth mentioning. Vic shrugged, annoyed that he couldn't make the 8 react. He tossed it aside like garbage. Piece of junk, no user experience at all. The talisman traced an arc through the air and landed perfectly on the Super Moose doll in a blue Superman suit, the one Enid kept by the bedside. The instant the talisman touched the plush, the carvings on the 8 flared a gentle white. A pulse of uncanny life energy rippled outward and washed over the doll. Under the stunned eyes of Vic, Wednesday, and Enid, the previously lifeless Super Moose twitched its limbs. It stood up, patted its chest to remove imaginary dust, and announced in a righteously cartoonish voice, Do, moose action! Its plastic eyes lit up and locked on Vic. The little plush finger pointed straight at him. Evil villain, how dare you take me from Princess Jade? Face the judgment of Super Moose. Before anyone could react, the animated doll launched itself like a blue plush cannonball, charging at Vic's face. Holy! Vic, wide-eyed, moved with absurd speed and grabbed Super Moose by both antlers. Let go! Villain! Evil must be punished. The moose thrashed and threw tiny punches, but its reach was laughable, equal parts heroic and pathetic. Vic held the struggling magical creature, and as the initial confusion evaporated, a manic excitement took over. A new 20-something that could give life to inanimate objects. Holy crap! Giving life to objects? This power is insane, he blurted. With this, I could run for Pope in 15, he added, then corrected himself with giddy ambition. No, I'd be Jesus. Imagine the old Pope praising my name while holding the Bible. His eyes skimmed over the other stuffed animals, the sheep, the rabbit, and back to the 8. Rat, rabbit, sheep, monkey. He remembered the sculpture with its 12 neat slots, and a wild thought struck him. Wait, could these be the two from that ancient eastern country? He swallowed, a new note of respect softening his features. Shangzhou, maybe he was actually pretty impressive. 12 of these, 12 insane abilities. That reverence lasted all of 30 seconds before his usual arrogance and possessiveness returned. He shook the still squeaking super moose, looked at the four warm 16 on the bed, and grinned, teeth sharp. What a pity. Now these 16, including you, little moving moose, belong to me. If only I could collect all the 16, he murmured, handling them like treasure. 12 powers concentrated in one person? The possibilities made his mind run. But how to find the rest scattered across the 20? Random searching would be hopeless. He rubbed his chin, frowning as he worked through options. His phone chimed cheerfully in his pocket. Ring ring. Hello, Sister Mavis. Vic's voice brightened instantly. What? Really? Oh, love you, my big sister. He listened for a moment, his smile growing until it beamed. Understood. We'll be there. Absolutely on time. Wait for us. He practically bounced as he hung up, face lit with pure glee. Guys, guess what? Sister Mavis just called. Enid leaned in, caught by his mood. Spill. What is it? Vic wrapped an arm around her, twirled her like she was a dance partner. Huge news. Everyone at 19 is going on a group trip. Mavis told us to pack and meet them. It's a 3-trip, and she already paid for us. Luxury cruise ship. Enid's azure eyes sparkled. Sun, beach, parties. Oh my God, we need swimsuits. I can't wait. Wednesday, who normally steered clear of group outings, almost unconsciously curled a lip at the word cruise. She was about to refuse. Oh my 13 Wednesday. Vic, like a practiced tempter, released Enid and sidled up to Wednesday. He leaned close and whispered, voice low and conspiratorial. Don't be so quick to say no. Guess where the ship boards? The Bermuda Triangle, the heart of mystery, and the destination, the lost city of Atlantis. The route even passes where they say the Kraken shows up. Each word was a hook aimed at Wednesday's love of the dark and unknown. Bermuda Triangle, Atlantis, Kraken. She repeated the names, a flicker of something dangerous and excited crossing her pale face. She pursed her lips to stay cool, but her faster-than-usual cadence betrayed her interest. That does contain a hint of worth investigating mystery. Fine, I'll reluctantly. Ha! I knew you'd agree, Vic crowed, giving her no chance to back out. He and Enid took an arm each, tacitly escorting Wednesday toward the door. Come on, we need to go swimsuit shopping. Wait, swimsuits? No, I absolutely refuse to wear such revealing, shallow. Wednesday's objections dissolved the moment Atlantis was mentioned. At that moment, the door opened and Tyler walked in, holding a ridiculously sugary chocolate milkshake, a sheen of sweat on his brow. Where are you all going? I got it like you asked. Double sugar. To hell with that milkshake. Vic waved him off without a glance, excitement overriding everything. Come on, Tyler, we're heading on an unprecedented luxury adventure. Tyler looked between the trio and the abandoned milkshake, sighed, set the cup on the table, and followed, resignation in every step. Damn it, can't I ever catch a break? He rubbed his temples and muttered, having a boss with endless energy and whimsy is more exhausting than turning into Hyde. Stepping out of the hotel, the afternoon sun hit Vic hard enough to make him squint. He glanced at the dark hand members standing stiffly by the entrance, not far away, but awkwardly arranged. Valmont, Afen, Rasu, Zhou, and a pale bandaged Afu. Vic sighed, amusement and bafflement lacing his voice. I mean, you lot could be doing anything with that kind of relentless persistence, he said. Why pick a fight with us? Guess Tyler didn't leave much of an impression, huh? He tilted his head and tipped his chin toward the pale, gloomy young man beside him. Right, Tyler? Tyler stepped forward without a word, flexing his wrist until it clicked. His eyes were cold and empty, sweeping over necks, joints, any weak spot, as if scanning for the best angle to tear someone apart. A suffocating chill radiated off him. The air seemed to freeze. Cold sweat beaded on Valmont's forehead. He'd seen what this skinny kid could become. He hurried forward, hands raised in a complicated attempt at a conciliatory smile, nervous, awkward, desperately sincere. Hey, wait, calm down, man. Don't be rash. We're not here to cause trouble this time. He swallowed, trying to steady his voice. We're here to discuss cooperation. Cooperation? Vic raised an eyebrow. The impatience on his face shifted instantly into keen interest, like a child spotting a new toy. He patted Tyler's shoulder to hold him back, slipped his hands into his pockets, and ambled forward a couple of steps. His gaze swept over Valmont and the sullen men cowering behind him. Interesting. Let's hear it. Valmont let out a quiet breath of relief, but looking into Vic's eyes, where something dangerously playful flickered, the pressure didn't ease. He forced the most sincere tone he could muster. We want those 12-5. Vic laughed, scoffing as if he'd heard the world's funniest joke. Ha! No deal. It's daylight, a little early for pipe dreams, don't you think? Don't be hasty, Valmont shot back, desperate to keep the plan alive. Here are terms first. Valmont kept smiling, reciting the spiel Shang Tzu had fed him. If you hand over the 12-5, Shang Tzu promises he can grant you one wish. Grant my wish? Vic mocked, hands spread wide. What is your stone dragon, some kind of wish-granting turtle? Drop in a coin and dreams come true? Valmont bristled but continued, pitching the tale with everything he had. Thousands of years ago, Shang Tzu ruled the world. His palace treasure hoarded rare things from everywhere. It contains everything, wonders you couldn't imagine, secrets you've never heard of. Even the lost zero is there. He tried to make it sound irresistible. The 5 are powerful, yes, but compared to the rarer, stranger treasures in Shang Tzu's vault, which is better is obvious. Take the 5, and we get the chance to enter his treasury and pick whatever we want. Vic rubbed his chin and didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at Wednesday and Enid. Sounds kinda interesting, right? He said casually. A treasury that can grant any wish beats these cold, stony, don't you think? Wednesday's dark, limpid eyes slid toward him. Her voice was cool. Legends come with traps. The credibility of this Shang Tzu is extremely low. Enid hugged her super moose plush tighter, her blue eyes worried. Vic, they don't seem like good people. Exactly. Vic drew the word out, amusement nearly spilling over. See that? That's the problem. There's no trust here. Ruling the world, rare treasures, sounds plausible on the surface. He took 2 slow steps and stopped right in front of Valmont, close enough to see the sweat running down the man's temple. But how do I know your former world ruler, bricked up in a wall, isn't feeding me empty promises? Anyone can talk big. Valmont's Addams apple bobbed as he tried to stay composed. Shang Tzu guarantees it. His treasury exists. Dignity? Vic snorted, as if he'd heard a bad joke. He looked back at Wednesday and Enid. A demon who needs his lackeys to farm resurrection props lecturing me about dignity. Was his dignity sold by the pound? Wednesday's mouth twitched. Enid giggled despite herself. Valmont went from red to pale. A fan muttered under his breath. Boss, what he said kinda makes sense. Valmont let out a heavy sigh and sagged inwardly. He'd already cursed the stingy old wall dragon Shang Tzu in his head more times than he could count. He'd expected this meeting to fail. At least when dealing with Valmont, Shang Tzu had dangled a tangible bait, the golden Rooster King treasure of glittering gold and jewels Valmont had seen and touched. Even if Shang Tzu dragged his feet on delivery, there had been something concrete to keep them hooked. But here, facing Vic, Shang Tzu had offered an empty pie. No deposit, no proof. Why would anyone bite? Valmont was about to shepherd his beaten crew away to figure out how to explain things to the hot-tempered dragon on the wall when a heavy palm landed on his shoulder, making him jump. Well then, Vic said, voice light as if deciding what to have for dinner. Pleasure doing business. What? Valmont spun around, disbelief and shock written all over his face. Moments ago, he'd been mocked and dismissed. Now Vic was shaking his hand. No reason, Vic grinned, eyes wild and gleeful. Just thought it'd be interesting. Valmont glanced at him, stunned. A sudden thought flashed through his mind. This guy might actually be insane. Then joy flooded him. Lunatic or not, if he could get the 5, even if Vic had escaped from Arkham, he would take it. He forced an overly enthusiastic smile and seized Vic's hand, which hadn't been withdrawn, pumping it vigorously. Great. Pleasure doing business. Truly the wisest choice, Valmont crowed. Vic, Enid said, tugging his sleeve, her eyes wide. What if they don't keep their word? That Shang Tzu sounds dangerous and cunning. Vic turned and ruffled Enid's blonde hair. His smile stayed harmless, but what he said next sent a chill through Valmont. Don't worry, sweetie. His voice was soft, almost fond. Then he leaned in and added in a whisper that was anything but comforting, because I'm not planning to keep my promise either. Valmont froze. Vic licked his lips slowly, revealing sharp canines. His eyes glittered with greedy excitement, like a predator sizing up prey. The 5, I want. Shangju's treasury, I want. Even his useful little underlings here, I want them too. He leaned forward and gave Valmont a dazzling, murderous smile. Everything is mine. Wednesday, standing to the side, observed flatly, that really does fit your greedy, shameless, contract-free style. Hey, buddy, at least say these things behind our backs. Valmont's mouth twitched. He felt insulted. Who loudly plotted to double-cross their partner right in front of them? This generation had no sense of honor. This kind of talk belonged in a dim secret room, whispered into someone's ear. Pa, he'd even prefer it in the dark. What's the big deal? Vic grinned, casually draping an arm over Valmont's shoulder and giving him a hearty, brotherly squeeze. I'm saying it so you can hear. The sudden warmth made Valmont deeply uncomfortable. The hand on his shoulder felt like 1,000 pounds, pressing on his chest until he panicked. You? What do you mean by that? A cold bead of sweat formed on his brow. Something about Vic's line of thought felt wrong. Vic leaned in, still smiling, voice lowered but oozing persuasion. What I mean, Brother Valmont, is the cooperation I mentioned isn't with that talking stone on the wall. He watched Valmont's pupils contract, then enunciated slowly, word by word. It's with you, Valmont. A personal cooperation with you. With me? Valmont licked his dry lips, his heart hammering. A vague but intoxicating thought slipped into his mind. Exactly. Vic's smile deepened, fox-like. Come on, tell me, what has that stone got you doing to make you serve it so faithfully? The Golden Rooster King's treasure or something else? Whatever promises it made, the key question is... He leaned back and sized Valmont up with exaggerated discovery. How much real return have you actually seen? Real gold and silver? Even a small, tangible deposit? None. Valmont ground the word out through his teeth, his face burning. Not just none. He, the leader of the Dark Hand, had nearly bankrupted himself chasing that thing. Payouts to his underlings' families, equipment replacement, maintaining an intelligence network. None of it was cheap. Lately, he'd even considered layoffs. Who would believe it if word got out? None. Vic's eyes widened. His voice rose with disbelief, sympathy, and a hint of mockery. Good heavens, working yourself to the bone, losing money and men, and not a single cent back? Brother, today's capitalists are missing a model worker like you. They'd give you a Best Contributor award after hearing your story. Valmont's face flushed and paled as he tried to keep the last shred of dignity. As long as we can ultimately get the Golden Rooster King's treasure, these losses are nothing but a speck on the scale. His voice trembled. He couldn't even convince himself. Stop lying to yourself. Vic dropped the act. His tone went sharp and precise, cutting through Valmont's denial like a scalpel. You know as well as I do that that broken stone is using you for free. It has no intention of keeping its promises. It's exploiting you. Once you're useless, it'll toss you aside, maybe even swallow you. Vic's words hammered at Valmont's fragile defenses. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. His lips quivered. No, it wouldn't. Listen, Valmont, Vic interrupted, voice compelling. Instead of pinning your hopes to a vague, untrustworthy ancient thing, why don't we team up and take it all? Clean it out. See, clean it out. Valmont's pupils quaked at the ruthlessness implied by the phrase. Exactly. Excitement glittered in Vic's eyes, as if he could already see the haul. You find a way to get its secrets out of Saint, especially the location of that palace stuffed full of treasures. Leave the rest to me. I'm a man of principle, Valmont said. Then a flash of cunning crossed his face. I won't make silly promises about splitting everything. I wouldn't believe that either. He changed tack, voice honeyed with temptation. But I won't stop you from taking whatever you truly want, like the Golden Rooster King's treasure. After all, it's not exactly your property, so spending it won't feel like hurting anyone, right? Think about it. Vic's words were like whispers from an abyss, striking at the deepest desires and fears in Valmont's heart. Memories of running errands for Saint, only to be brushed off and scolded, flickered through his mind. His longing for the treasure and distrust of Saint overruled restraint. He took a breath, his gaze hardening into a hint of ruthlessness, and extended his hand. Pleasure doing business. Pleasure doing business. Vic's smile bloomed. They shook firmly. A scheme to clean out an ancient demon had just been agreed to in broad daylight under everyone's eyes. Nearby, Afan, Rasu, and Joe exchanged looks, feeling as if their boss had just boarded a pirate ship, one that looked particularly unreliable. 20 minutes later, a luxurious private helicopter bearing the Dark Hand logo descended onto the hotel's front lawn. Tyler crossed his arms, watching coldly, and snorted in disdain. He turned to Vic, who was eagerly heading for the cabin door. "Aren't you afraid they'll turn on you? These people are just ungrateful snakes." "Hey!" Enid took immediate offense, her azure eyes flashing, cheeks puffing. "Tyler, watch your words. Did you have to say ungrateful snakes?" As a werewolf, she took it personally. Tyler paused, realizing his slip, and muttered stiffly, "Sorry, no offense meant. No need to worry." Wednesday's voice was calm. She smoothed her skirt and glanced at Afan and Rasu standing almost obsequiously by the helicopter. "As long as Vic's carrot is big and tempting and the stick he holds is hard and lethal, they'll behave more obediently than the best trained hounds." Enid pursed her lips and muttered, "That still sounds a bit insulting. After all, wolves are canines too." "Haha, exactly. Look how well behaved they are." Vic had already climbed aboard and taken the pilot's seat, waving at the three still on the lawn. "They even sent a private helicopter. Come on up. It's my first time flying one of these. They look way cooler than in the games." "Got it." Enid's curiosity won out. She grabbed Wednesday's hand and ran toward the helicopter. Though Wednesday kept her usual impassive expression, she followed. Tyler watched the two excited girls, glanced at the maniac in the pilot's chair, rubbed his hands, and sighed. Resigned, he trudged aboard last. The cabin door closed, the rotor blades whirred, and the helicopter shuddered as the engine spooled up, ready to lift off. Vic's casual, exploratory remark landed like a delayed bomb in Enid's, Wednesday's, and Tyler's minds. "It's my first time flying one of these. First time. First time." Their earlier excitement froze. Enid's smile vanished. Wednesday tightened her grip on the strap of her bag. Even Tyler's perpetually gloomy face flickered. Inside, the roar of the rotors filled the cabin, underscored by a thick silence of mounting dread. Vic, seated in the pilot's chair, gazed at the bewildering array of instruments and controls and beamed like a child with a new toy. "So, which button should I press first?" 97. Leprechaun Airlines Enid had thought the helicopter ride with Vic, twisting and turning like a fighter jet, was the most terrifying transportation experience of her life. Then she set foot on this ramshackle airliner, Little Goblin Aviation. High over the ocean, the plane was painted an odd, eerie green, its fuselage patched and rusted in places. It shuddered through the air currents with violent turbulence, looking as if it might fall to pieces at any moment. One engine constantly belched thick black smoke and occasionally spat playful little flames, as if greeting the passengers. Through the grease-smeared cockpit glass, Enid could see the chaos inside. Two goblin pilots in crooked hats were brawling over a steering wheel that looked ready to fall apart. They jabbed at each other and spat curses in some incomprehensible language. In the cabin, a dozen tiny goblin flight attendants in ill-fitting uniforms were serving passengers the only way they seemed to know how, a full-on, no-rules free-for-all. They shrieked as they sprinted down the narrow aisles, rattling meal carts and accidentally, deliberately, splattering unknown bubbling liquids onto people. Enid watched, horrified, as a Bigfoot passenger had his foot run over by a speeding cart and clutched his broken leg, howling in pain. Someone wrapped head to toe in bandages had a scalding cup of coffee dumped over their head, making them jump, and the bandages loosen. "Vic?" Enid's voice trembled. She clung to his arm like a frightened animal, pressing into his side. Even Wednesday, usually as icy as a marble statue, had her face a blank mask while her hand gripped Vic's wrist so tightly her knuckles went white, an honest betrayal of the fear under her calm. Tyler had been so rattled by the surreal scene that he'd slipped into his hulking hide form or hunched in his seat like a frightened beast and letting out low, suppressed growls. "Oh my God, Vic!" Enid's voice climbed in pitch, her blue eyes huge. "I'm kind of freaking out. Is this plane really safe? Look, the engine's smoking. And did those screws just fall off the wing?" "Hey, little wolf, don't worry." Vic put an arm around Enid's trembling shoulders, his voice breezy and cheerful. Little Goblin Aviation is very safe. He thumped the cabin wall with a palm for emphasis. The wall replied with a dull thump thump. Believe me, this baby has been flying for at least a few hundred years, and there's never been an accident. A few hundred years? Enid nearly leapt out of her seat. Her sharp wolf claws snapped out, almost tearing Vic's shirt. They haven't replaced the plane in hundreds of years? This is a museum exhibit. Did airplanes even exist hundreds of years ago? Wednesday closed her eyes, her expression saying she was actively suppressing the urge to throw the plane, and Vic out the nearest hatch. "Don't worry, little wolf," she said flatly. Venom, perched on Vic's shoulder, poked its black head out, white eyes blinking. Using a tentacle, it pointed at the window. "They're professionals," it seemed to say. Enid squinted where Venom pointed. Her pupils expanded to the point of disbelief. Dangling off the wing in overalls was a maintenance goblin, clinging to a safety rope that looked like twisted shoelaces. In its other hand, it held a gigantic hammer and was bashing the smoking engine casing with a furious clang. Sparks flew. The goblin stopped mid-swing, turned, and through the window caught sight of Enid's pale face. Instead of apology, it offered a radiant smile and waved its hammer, as if greeting a friend. Oh my God! Enid's head spun. She buried her face in Vic's warm chest and whimpered, terrified. "This has to be a nightmare. It has to be a nightmare." Vic chuckled and accepted a cup of bubbling green beverage handed to him by a goblin flight attendant. He sipped carelessly, hugged Enid tighter, and raised his cup in salute to the maintenance goblin, like this was some grand adventure. From the cabin speakers came a horrid screech of metal, then a bright, chirpy announcement. "Ladies, gentlemen, and non-humans, welcome aboard Little Goblin Aviation. Please unfasten your seatbelts and move about freely because we are about to land." Wednesday's eyes flew open. Outside the window, rolling lead-gray clouds and a flat, endless dark blue sea. Where was the airport? "Land?" her voice asked, for the first time showing a thin edge of tension. "Vic, there doesn't seem to be an airport nearby, does there?" Her question was drowned by a sudden, violent cacophony of metal and a series of explosive bangs. Through the window, the sight that greeted them was almost absurdly terrible. The maintenance goblin on the wing had begun swinging its massive wrench with full force, performing what looked like one last heroic rescue attempt on the smoking engine. Sparks and smoke erupted. Then, under Wednesday's incredulous gaze, the weather-beaten engine gave a dying groan and tore free from its mount. Trailing flames and black smoke, it detached and plunged like a falling meteor toward the sea. The goblin, propelled by the same force, was flung off as well, turning into a tiny black dot and emitting a thin, terrified shriek as it fell. Wednesday's composure cracked. Was that their landing procedure? Remove an engine and glide in? It was the most hellish, impossible joke she had ever heard. "Oh, girls, the best part is coming," Vic shouted, the exact opposite of calm. His eyes were wild with excitement, like someone who'd been waiting for the finale of a ride. "I just love this traditional feature of Little Goblin Aviation, powerless gliding. Ha! What is powerless gliding?" Enid lifted her head from Vic's chest, dazed. Vic, why is it so quiet? The deafening engine noise is gone." It wasn't just quieter. Outside, the engine mount was empty. The engine itself had fled. An ominous silence fell. With its main power gone, the plane pitched its nose downward. A bone-sapping weightlessness crept over them. The threat to their lives was suddenly, painfully real. Wednesday, without thinking further, did what Enid had already done. She grabbed Vic, any man who might have an answer, or at least could serve as a cushion, and clung. Vic, held tightly by two trembling girls, beamed like a man on a top-tier drop tower. "Hold on tight, girls. Free-fall acceleration. Feel the wind." The plane, a battered steel bird with one fewer engine, nosed down and plunged toward the cold, unbroken surface of the sea. Enid was curled in Vic's arms, trembling so hard her long wolf claws had unconsciously extended, digging into his lapel until her knuckles went white. Oh my God," she kept repeating. Her sobs were shredded by the wind into ragged fragments. Wednesday, pale as she was, managed to keep a brittle composure. Her sharp eyes scanned the cabin, and the more she looked, the more absurd everything felt. The monstrous passengers, of all shapes and sizes, were unnervingly calm. The seven, wrapped in bandages, was leisurely rewrapping the loose ends that the gale had undone. Several short nines had produced a deck of bone-carved cards and continued a poker game without missing a beat despite the violent turbulence. No one showed fear. Their faces held only a numbed, familiar acceptance, like, here we are again. Through the greasy cockpit window, Wednesday's mouth twitched. The two 4S had apparently stopped fighting and were sitting side by side in the pilot's seats. The control sticks lurched and shook on their own, but the two pilots acted as if they were in a peaceful afternoon garden. One of them had even set out a patterned ceramic teapot and was calmly pouring steaming tea for himself and his companion. The cups clattered across the wildly bucking control panel, but their hands stayed steady. Any plans for the holidays? One captain asked, blowing on his tea. Ahem, the usual, the other replied, sipping, a sigh of content resignation in his voice. Football with the wife and kids, the little ones full of energy. How blissful. Wednesday felt reality crumble, piece by piece, like the plane's skin. She began to wonder if she alone had the wrong definition of normal. Even the snack cart operator held her ground with grim determination amid the aircraft's violent shaking. Clutching the cart's handle with both hands, she hawked her wares in a shrill, practiced voice worthy of a train platform. Beer, soft drinks, mineral water, peanuts, sunflower seeds, 8 treasure porridge. Sir Skeleton, tuck in your leg. Make way, make way. She somehow pushed the cart past Vic and the others and called out as if it were a routine service run. Last call, anything for you? Vic grinned and ordered a can of beer. He popped it open with a snap, took a relaxed swig, and, watching lightning flash and the plane's skin peel away outside, declared, "This view is perfect with beer." Enid lifted her head from his chest, tears in her eyes as she took in the surreal scene, then looked at Vic, who looked positively pleased, and at the calm, strange passengers. She sniffled and, voice thick with confusion, whispered to Vic, Aren't they afraid of dying?" Vic hugged her tighter and laughed, as casual as if commenting on the weather. Afraid of what? For them, this is nothing. This sort of trouble is routine. Look, the captains haven't even spilled their tea. At that moment, there was a deafening boom. A large panel of hull was ripped away by the gale. Cold rain and the smell of seawater flooded in. The plane, now little more than a bare skeleton and a few remaining seats, pitched downward faster. Wednesday grabbed a nearby exposed metal support and felt the stomach-dropping sensation of weightlessness. Before her, the convertible plane and the passengers, sipping tea, playing cards, selling snacks, looked like a staged theater of the insane. She was convinced this world must be a mad, gigantic three, and she, a bewildered audience member, was trying to keep hold of reason. With an ear-splitting crash and a spray of white foam, the dilapidated fuselage plunged into the ink-blue sea and was swallowed whole. A few seconds later, the wreckage stubbornly bobbed back up, listing and groaning like a drunk. Enid spat out a mouthful of seawater. A small silver fish slipped from her lips and dropped onto her wet knee, twitching its tail a few nervous times. She blinked, huge azure eyes rimmed with salt water. "Oh, 8, you're too adorable," she murmured. Vic laughed, wiped her face with his sleeve, and tried to soothe her. Am I still alive?" Enid's voice trembled. She looked to Vic like a frightened animal needing reassurance. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Everything's fine." Vic wrapped an arm around her shoulders and patted her gently. "See? We're fine. Little goblin aviation, thrills without real danger, top-notch after-sales service." He even shook water from his hair for emphasis. Then he glanced at Wednesday, who, though soaked and with her black Gothic dress clinging to her, had regained her icily composed expression. "Need some comfort?" His voice carried a teasing edge. Wednesday shot him a sidelong look, cold as glass. "What do you think? Then could you let go first?" Vic winced and flexed his wrist. "I feel like my bones are about to be crushed." Only then did Wednesday realize her hand had been clamped on his wrist since the crash had started, leaving pale marks. She pulled away as if burned, folded her hands neatly on her knees, straightened, and resumed her usual reserve, acting as if she had not been the one to grasp someone for comfort. Ahem. She cleared her throat and shifted her gaze toward the distance. "Where are we?" As if answering her, the plane speaker crackled. Despite the static, a chirpy voice came through. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for flying Little Goblin Aviation. Our destination, the Bermuda Triangle, is just ahead. We wish you a pleasant journey. The Bermuda Triangle? The Enid's curiosity lit up. She peered where the announcement pointed. Wow. The survivors around her made the same odd sound. Before them, the sea had been cleaved by some impossible force, forming a depression with almost perfectly regular edges, a triangular basin hundreds of meters deep, its water a mysteriously calm, shimmering azure, unlike the roiling ink-blue sea around it. The water within the triangle looked like a vast sapphire, serene and dreamlike. The surrounding surf flowed down the bowl walls, but never filled the hollow, as if an invisible barrier held it in place. In the center of the triangle floated a huge platform, assembled from more than a dozen abandoned ships of all sizes and styles lashed and stacked together. The platform's surface sat almost level with the surrounding sea. Rusted hulls, leaning masts, broken portholes, ruins that should have signaled decay and doom instead formed a rough, fantastical spectacle, a floating postmodern ghost fortress on the water. This is incredible. Enid sighed, forgetting her earlier fear, her blue eyes reflecting the eerie, beautiful light. Even Wednesday, usually unreadable, showed a flicker of stunned admiration. She parted her pale lips, taken aback by the grand, uncanny sight. Vic saw both of their reactions and spread his arms like a proud showman. Welcome to the edge of the world, my eights! Ready for the real adventure? The wreckage bobbed with the waves and drifted slowly toward the entrance at the base of the miraculous platform of shipwrecks. 99. Reunion at Monster Wharf. The line at the entrance moved slowly, the air heavy with the smell of seawater and rust. As Vic shuffled forward, he couldn't help glancing back at Tyler. Tyler was wearing nothing but swim trunks. His sculpted, muscular upper body drew an appreciative look from a nearby siren woman wrapped in seaweed. Listen, Tyler. Vic pointed at Tyler's scanty lower half, his face a little awkward. I know you're excited, but did you really need to change into your trunks this early? We're still a ways from the beach. Tyler shot him a resentful look. His voice came out muffled. My 2 transformations already ripped all my clothes. If it wasn't for these trunks being stretchy, I wouldn't even have anything left. He tugged at the tiny scrap of fabric, his expression reading like a cartoon bubble. Life is hard. Vic finally remembered and scratched his head. The little symbiote perched on his shoulder squirmed, then popped out a neatly folded set of clothes. Here, take these. I haven't worn them. I'll pay you back after the trip, and remember to buy more elastic fiber clothes so you don't keep ruining your outfits. Thanks, boss. Tyler accepted the clothes, and the gloom on his face eased. He pulled them on quickly, loose, but at least he wouldn't have to stand in the monster crowd in nothing but trunks. Around them, monsters of all shapes and sizes milled about. A hulking, card-shaped creature playing cards with itself, a bandaged mummy, even a small, odd fellow who was inflating his own head. The tension in Tyler's shoulders eased in an almost unfamiliar way. He relished the power the hide transformation brought him, but he still resented how uncontrollable and alien it could feel. Even intolerant Nevermore, the hide was an anomaly among anomalies. Here, however, his hide felt ordinary, just another face in a sea of faces. That sense of belonging was a comfort he hadn't expected. Leaving Tyler to soak in the sight, Vic scanned the crush of monsters and quickly spotted a familiar figure, Count Dracula, resplendent in refined black formal wear, with Mavis, Johnny, and little Dennis at his side. Oh, Uncle Dracula, I missed you so much! Vic's face lit up and he shot forward like a cannonball, wrapping Dracula in a vigorous hug that nearly threw the Count off balance. Dracula was momentarily stunned, then pulled a stern face while the mirth in his eyes showed through. He grabbed Vic by the ear with just the right amount of affectionate force, an elder's scolding. Humph, cut it out, you brat. Been gone so long you finally remember to come back? Couldn't even send a letter, huh? He leaned closer, lowering his voice, half teasing, half genuinely worried. Running off into danger and not calling home. If Mavis hadn't been worried and come to look for you, were you planning to hide this forever? Think you're all grown up now? Yes, my fault. Uncle Dracula, go easy. Vic pulled an exaggerated, ingratiating face. Uncle, take it easy. Mavis came over with Johnny and little Dennis. Mavis watched Vic's theatrical performance and covered a smile with her hand. Johnny, holding Dennis's hand, chuckled beside her. It's all right. This kid's skin is thick. Dracula relented and patted Vic's shoulder firmly, looking him over with relieved eyes. Glad you're okay? Welcome back, kid. Vic rubbed his reddened ear and grinned, basking in the warmth of family. Mavis noticed that Vic, Wednesday, and Enid were still damp and a little rumpled. With a delicate flick of her wrist, a soft, dry breeze swept over them. The seawater evaporated from their skin, their clothes smoothed, and even the bit of seaweed in Enid's hair disappeared. Thank you, Sister Mavis. Enid's sapphire eyes sparkled as she grinned gratefully. Wednesday gave a small nod, her thanks understated but sincere. Dracula's gaze lingered a moment on Wednesday, and Enid before he slung an arm around Vic's shoulders and steered him to a quieter corner for a man-to-man talk. Ahem. He lowered his voice, wearing a teasing, I know everything expression. I heard from Mavis. These two are both your girlfriends? He raised an eyebrow. Not bad, kid. Quite the player. I'm loyal, you know. Vic blushed a little, but couldn't help feeling proud. He nudged Dracula with his elbow. Don't say that too loudly, Uncle. Who knows, you might spark a romance yourself on this trip. He winked toward the crowd of female monsters. Dracula scoffed and adjusted his bow tie, restoring his dignified composure. Ha! What romance? This is a family vacation. My heart has no room for anyone else. Vic smiled knowingly and let the subject drop. He looked up at the dock, a crazy, ramshackle thing built from countless shipwrecks, and felt his excitement for the family vacation swell. At the back of the line, a man made up to look like a zombie, tattered clothes, cheap grease paint, moving with a stiff shuffle, peered around anxiously. It was Jackie Chan, disguised and skulking in. He'd seen wonders and horrors, the 13, the Shadowcon, even ancient demons, but being surrounded by hundreds of real monsters still made his skin crawl. He felt his makeup would soon be washed away by sweat. Bad luck, bad luck, bad luck. Jackie silently cursed. Was Uncle's divination right? Could the 13 really be hiding in a place like this, a den of monsters? Thank goodness Jade wasn't here. Her curiosity would get her into trouble. As he breathed easier at the thought, the last voice he wanted to hear cut crisply through the air, laced with mischief. Uncle Long, were you looking for me? Jackie Chan stiffened as if struck by paralysis. His neck creaked like a rusty hinge as he turned slowly to see Jade standing right behind him as if she had appeared out of nowhere. She was in a witch costume, pointed hat and all, complete with a little broomstick. A triumphant grin lit her face. Her big eyes blinked at him. Jade! Jackie squealed involuntarily, the sound cracking in his throat. Several nearby monsters turned to stare. A three-headed dragon snorted from all three mouths and sent out a little puff of sparks. Ah, heh, heh. It's nothing. Nothing. Just a naughty kid startled me. Jackie forced a smile that was embarrassingly awkward, bowing repeatedly to the curious onlookers. He pulled Jade to his side and hissed at her sharply and quietly. Jade, how did you get here? This place is dangerous. You have to go back right now. Jade blinked innocently and pointed her broom at the smoking wreckage of a plane still bobbing in the water. On that, Jackie looked at the nearly broken-apart aircraft and felt faint. How was she supposed to get back? Swim to San Francisco? He sighed helplessly and compromised. Forget it. Once we get on that platform, you stay right by my side. No, stay in the room. No running around. Understood? Jade snapped to attention, raised her hand, and gave a very solemn salute that made her look hilariously earnest. Scout's honor, Uncle Long. But the mischievous spark in her eyes made the promise sound thin. Jackie had zero confidence. He held her wrist and moved with the line, trying to keep a low profile, praying his uncle's divination would be right so he could find the 13 quickly and get this pint-sized troublemaker out of here. Jade, oblivious to danger, drank in the kaleidoscope of bizarre creatures around her, brimming with curiosity. To her, this was better than any amusement park. She was already planning how to slip away later and explore properly. As promised, a 10,000-word explosive update delivered. The author keeps their word. 100. Cruise ship sets sail. They stepped onto a massive platform built from countless shipwrecks. A briny sea breeze, smelling of rust and the deep ocean, hit them full in the face. A strange fish in a sailor's uniform, complete with human feet, stood at the entrance and greeted them with lifeless, glassy eyes and a monotone voice. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bermuda Triangle. You are about to embark on a thrilling cruise journey here. It raised a flipper-like limb and pointed toward the black horizon. A powerful searchlight suddenly pierced the night and picked out a colossal shape moving slowly closer. It was a luxury cruise ship beyond imagination. A streamlined hull that gleamed under the lights like warm ivory, tiered decks like hanging gardens, brilliantly lit like a sleepless city drifting on the sea. My goodness, Vic's eyes widened in wonder, reflecting the ship's dazzling lights. This is way too luxurious. I've never seen a vacation spot like this in my life. Right, Enid? Enid was just as stunned. Her sapphire blue eyes sparkled in the glow. She nodded vigorously, her voice dreamy. Vic, what do you think they have for fun up there? Not sure, but I'm going to find out. Vic whipped out the two, focused his will, and his figure blurred, dissolving into the night like a wisp of smoke. 2 seconds later, he reappeared in the same spot, as excited as a kid in a candy store, bouncing up and down nonstop. Oh my God, Enid, Wednesday, you can't imagine. He waved his arms and legs like he couldn't contain himself. Zip lines, giant water slides, infinity pools, 3D cinemas, jazz bars, international restaurants, karaoke rooms. They even have an auction house. I could live on this ship forever. I can't wait. Enid, infected by his enthusiasm, grabbed Vic's hand and bounced along, her blonde hair flying. You two are being dramatic. Count Dracula rolled his eyes with aristocratic hauteur. It's just a mobile hotel floating on water. All that nonsense, cinemas and bars. My hotel is far more interesting. We have talking staircases and mischievous ghosts. Indeed, Wednesday's expression remained flat as ever. It sounds saturated with superficial entertainment, utterly lacking depth or aesthetic merit. Vic leaned toward Mavis and whispered, Honestly, sometimes I think Wednesday's more like Uncle Dracula's real daughter. Mavis covered her mouth with a soft laugh. Actually, I always wanted a little sister. So that's why you always tried to get me to wear those Lolita dresses when I was little? Vic's face lit with sudden realization and mock accusation. Then he remembered something and dropped a bombshell. Oh, right. The cruise ship has several exhibition halls. I heard one displays torture devices and interrogation apparatus from various ancient civilizations, from the Middle Ages to modern times. The plaques are super detailed. Wednesday's indifferent face shifted for the first time. A flash of keen interest crossed her eyes. Oh, she said softly, the tone rising just a fraction. That does sound intriguing. Perhaps it's worth examining their historical authenticity and craftsmanship. Dracula clutched his chest in exaggerated outrage, dragging the word out for dramatic effect. Traitor! His handsome face fell into mock hurt. Mavis gently took his arm, her voice soft but firm. Oh, Father, you need a vacation. She paused, pain behind her eyes. You hardly ever leave the hotel anymore, not since Mom passed away. This is different. It's a chance for us all to make new memories together, with little Dennis, Johnny, and Vic. Dracula followed her gaze. Little Dennis was being led by Johnny, his small hand pointing excitedly at the cruise ship, eyes wide with wonder. Vic stood with an arm around each girl, laughing like there'd never been a shadow in his life. The heavy loneliness that had clung to Dracula for years seemed to lift for a moment as the family scene unfolded. The staged sorrow vanished, replaced by a genuinely relaxed, anticipatory smile. He spread his hands with the authority of the patriarch. All right, you've convinced me, my little Mavis. Everyone, let's enjoy this vacation to the fullest. Yay! Little Dennis cheered and began to bounce in place. A deep, long ship's horn blared, a declaration that echoed over the mysterious sea. The cruise ship began to move, slowly heading deeper into the Bermuda Triangle. Once they stepped onto the brilliantly lit deck, Vic was like a husky let out of its kennel. Holding Enid's hand with his left and Wednesday's with his right, he darted through the bustling crowd of monster passengers, eyes scanning for anything interesting. This way looks awesome. He ran ahead in a moment of carelessness. Thump. He collided with a slow-moving Elevum in tattered clothes. Oh, sorry, are you okay? Vic stopped and reached out to steady the staggering Lem, apologetic. I'm fine. That was my fault. I wasn't looking. The Boff-11 kept its head down. Its voice was hoarse and muffled, a bit flustered. I'm looking for my niece. Vic noticed something off about the Levin's voice, but didn't dwell on it. After all, it wasn't unusual for Levins to speak poorly. He patted the other's stiff shoulder enthusiastically. Looking for someone? Need any help? This ship is huge. Jackie Chan, disguised as the Weapon, was inwardly panicking. The cheerful young man before him was the same one who had stolen his talisman on the streets of San Francisco and who had once sent Jackie embedded in a wall. How could he also be on this ship? Vic peered at the Levin's lowered face, the sense of familiarity growing. He squinted and leaned closer. Hey, buddy, you look really familiar. Have I raided your tomb? Dug you up before? Jackie Chan nearly broke into a cold sweat and could only force a crooked, terrified smile. At that exact moment, boom, 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 multiple loud bangs cracked the night and a magnificent fireworks display exploded above the ship, painting the sky in vibrant colors and instantly illuminating Vic's delighted face. Wow! Vic's attention was completely captured. He looked up, grinning, and immediately forgot his suspicions about the 11. There's a fireworks show, too. Amazing. Wednesday. Let's find the best spot. He grabbed a girl by each hand and pulled them toward the upper deck for a better view. Jackie Chan let out a long, silent sigh of relief, feeling the tension drain from him. He hunched down and, not daring to linger, shuffled away stiffly like a real 11, melting into the shadowed corridors of the ship's cabins. All he wanted now was to find Jade, find the 9, and put as much distance as possible between himself and that dangerous man.